Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jorge Cortez. Jorge Humberto Martinez Cortez was born on January 5, 1978, in Mexico City. He kept his childhood and teenage years private, only sharing that he often clashed with his mother, who cared deeply for him, and his father, who rarely intervened in their arguments. Jorge's strained family relationships likely contributed to his emotional isolation and the development of his aggressive and unstable personality. To escape his difficult home life, Jorge left at a young age and embarked on a journey across Mexico, taking on temporary jobs to support himself. He worked as a waiter in various bars in Mexico City, including those in the Rosa and Cona districts, and also relied on tips from tourists in the popular Villa Du and Cuac districts, known for their extensive infrastructure and diverse entertainment options. Jorge's life of crime began in this place. In 2010, he was arrested for theft and given a 4-year prison sentence. However, because it was his first offense, the judge decided to release him on bail. At the time, no one suspected that this decision would set free a man who would later become one of Mexico's most notorious criminals. After his release, Jorge met a girl named Adriana and fell in love. Initially, he treated her with kindness and attention, but as their relationship deepened, his behavior became increasingly violent. Adriana soon found herself a victim of his physical abuse. Exhausted by his cruelty, she decided to end the relationship, but Jorge refused to accept her decision. One night, Jorge violently attacked Adriana, dragging her down the stairs by her hair and breaking her nose. He beat her so severely that she lost consciousness. When she came to, she saw Jorge holding a lighter and threatening to kill them both if she didn't stay with him. Despite his threats, Adriana continued to resist, which further enraged Jorge. He attempted to strangle her by grabbing her neck with both hands. However, Adriana managed to break free, grabbed a hammer, and began fighting back. She was able to force Jorge out of the apartment and ultimately out of her life for good. This violent confrontation occurred in 2011, and although Adriana reported the incident to the police, Jorge was released on bail and avoided punishment. In hindsight, Adriana's escape from Jorge that night saved her from a potentially deadly situation. Jorge would go on to take the lives of multiple women in the future. After meeting Jorge, 18-year-old Yang Kiang Marie became his new victim. Yang was a Korean girl who was very close to her mother, Monica, and her sisters, particularly Anna. Anna was a lively and athletic young woman who balanced her studies in psychology with a part-time job at a restaurant. Yang met Jorge at one of the bars where he worked, and they were immediately drawn to each other. After a brief courtship, they started dating, but their relationship was marked by violence. Despite their frequent arguments, they stayed together. When Yang turned 19, she decided to declare her independence from her family and move to the city with Jorge. However, this change only made their problems worse. Jorge's behavior became increasingly controlling and abusive. He constantly monitored Yang's activities, calling her every hour at work and restricting her interactions with friends. As a result, Yang felt trapped and realized she was a victim of domestic violence. However, she hid the truth from others, including her family, to avoid causing them concern. Only a few close people, including her sister Anna and some friends, knew about the situation. Despite her family's warnings and advice to leave Jorge, Yang struggled to break free. She attempted to leave him multiple times but always returned, held back by her own fears and vulnerabilities. During this time, Yang underwent a significant transformation, changing from a happy and lively person to someone who was depressed and willing to do anything to please Jorge. The relationship continued to deteriorate, becoming increasingly toxic and damaging to Yang's well-being. Yang's relationship with Jorge was marked by violent outbursts. On one occasion, Jorge refused to let Yang into their apartment when she came home late. On another, he locked her inside, set her clothes on fire, and chased her around the room in a fit of rage. In August 2014, their arguments escalated, and Yang decided to leave Jorge and move in with her parents. A friend encouraged her to report Jorge to the police and end the abuse. Although Yang initially agreed, she eventually returned to Jorge and they continued living together. Tragically, Yang's life was cut short. On September 21st, her body was discovered in their apartment, bearing signs of severe bruising. Jorge claimed to have found Yang hanging in the bedroom, stating that he had left her sleeping at noon the previous day, September 20th, after she had worked a shift at the bar. Jorge claimed that he returned home on the morning of September 21st to find Yang deceased. He immediately contacted the police and notified Yang's family of the tragic event. The news of Yang's death was devastating to her family, prompting Monica and Anna to rush to the scene. Upon arrival, they found police officers and forensic experts already at the apartment, carefully removing Yang's body from the bed. Jorge stated that when he saw his deceased wife, he became frantic and attempted to assist her. A police officer explained to the family that an investigation was ongoing and they needed to stay outside the house to protect potential evidence. As they watched, Yang's body, covered with a sheet, was carried out of the house. The police also informed them that the initial evidence suggested Yang's death was a suicide, a conclusion supported by the position of the body in Jorge's account, which the police believed to be truthful. However, Yang's family was skeptical and struggled to accept this explanation, finding it hard to believe that she would take her own life. When the family arrived to identify the body and prepare the necessary documents, they were surprised to find that the examination protocol was almost complete. The death certificate stated that Yang had died from strangulation by hanging. However, when the relatives were allowed to view the body, they noticed bruises on Yang's legs that seemed suspicious. Jorge attempted to explain the bruises by saying that the body had slipped from his hands and fallen to the floor when he tried to move it from the bed. Monica was not convinced by Jorge's explanation and suspected that something was not quite right. Investigations revealed more about Yang's tumultuous relationship with Jorge, fueling suspicion that her death might not be the suicide police claimed. During police testimony, friends described constant fighting between they, revealing Jorge's history of jealousy and aggression. His behavior extended to frequent phone calls to Yang's workplace, indicating a pattern of controlling behavior. Yang's sister Anna noted that a few months before the tragedy, her behavior dramatically shifted. Anna added that she started distancing herself from the family once the relationship with Jorge started. This prompted concern within the family. Despite growing concerns about Jorge's unstable behavior and doubts about the official explanation, the police were quick to dismiss theories and rushed to close the case. Experts at the Katok morgue recommended cremating Yang's body, which meant that further forensic investigation would not be possible. Yang's mother was deeply suspicious of Jorge's involvement in her daughter's death, but she eventually agreed to the cremation due to pressure from her family, thereby giving up the chance to gather evidence to support her suspicions. Jorge did not attend the funeral, but he got a tattoo of a broken heart, supposedly to show his grief. However, he also cut off all contact with Yang's family. Yang's death had a devastating impact on her family, especially her mother, Monica. The overwhelming pain of losing her daughter, combined with feelings of loneliness and despair, led Monica to develop an addiction to alcohol and smoking. Monica was devastated when her daughter Yang passed away suddenly. Despite her overwhelming grief, Monica refused to accept the initial explanation of Yang's death, finding it contradictory to her daughter's outgoing and life-loving nature. Unsettled by details like the bruises on Yang's body and the lack of evidence supporting the claimed manner of death, Monica's instincts told her there was more to the story. To get answers, Monica launched her own investigation into the case. Monica acquired security footage from her daughter's home, revealing her son-in-law Jorge was the last person to see Yang alive. With the help of a private attorney and forensic pathologist, Monica reviewed Yang's final days. An unexpected development led to a shocking explanation, revealing a deeply seated scandal and a misclassified homicide. Monica's determination uncovered hidden details, ultimately revealing the truth behind Yang's death. The detective completely rejected the initial account of Yang's death, presenting conclusive evidence that proved she was murdered. Further investigation revealed several discrepancies with the original autopsy. There were no signs of hanging on Yang's body, but her neck showed signs of strangulation, and a scarf had been used to make it appear as though she had hanged herself. Bruises on her hands and fingernails suggested she had tried to fight back. The medical examiner confirmed that any competent expert would have reached the same conclusion. This raises serious questions. Why did the police ignore these facts, and why did the family receive a false report about their daughter's death? Monica's relentless pursuit of truth led her to conduct a 7-month investigation, uncovering a series of disturbing failures and incompetence by law enforcement agencies. Her research revealed that Yang had previously reported violence by Jorge to the police, but her cries for help were ignored. Monica also discovered that Jorge had ties to his father and the staff handling the case, which, combined with the severity of Yang's injuries and the apparent negligence of the authorities, compelled her to take decisive action. Monica appealed to the prosecutor's office, seeking a review of the case and justice for Jorge, the main suspect. However, she was met with neglect and cynicism instead of support. A prosecutor even questioned her competence, suggesting she should focus on being a housewife and seek psychological help rather than pursuing justice. Undeterred, Monica continued her investigation, driven by her love for her child and her desire for truth. Her perseverance ultimately paid off. Jorge committed another murder in 2016, a devastating end to Yang's story. This event began a new chapter in Campira's life. She met Jorge online, where he hid his dark nature behind a charming facade. Unaware of his past, she was drawn to his friendly, sociable personality, and they soon developed a romantic relationship. Campira's close friends discovered her new relationship when she posted a photo of herself and her boyfriend on social media, beaming with happiness. For several weeks, their romance seemed perfect. As 2016 drew to a close, Campira's mother, Margarita, met Jorge for the first time on December 28. Campira, Jorge, and her children then traveled to Acapulco to spend the New Year's holidays with her parents. However, Jorge later convinced Campira to extend their stay, and she asked her mother to watch the children for a few more days. Margarita agreed, unaware of the tragedy that was about to unfold. 3 days later, Campira was found dead. The last time Margarita had spoken to her daughter was on December 30th. When Margarita tried to call Campira on New Year's Eve, she was met with silence. Campira always answered her phone or returned calls promptly, so Margarita's anxiety grew with each passing minute. As the hours ticked by, Campira's unusual silence and lack of online activity only heightened Margarita's concerns. Eventually, Margarita decided to contact Jorge to find out what had happened to her daughter. Jorge attempted to alleviate Margarita's concerns by downplaying the argument and Campira departure to celebrate the new year with friends. However, Margarita remained unconvinced and asked a family friend to check on Campira. When the friend arrived at Campira's house, Jorge told him that Campira was asleep and unable to meet with him. Margarita's suspicions grew, and she sensed that Jorge was hiding something. On December 31st, between 5 o'clock and 8 p.m., Jorge committed a heinous crime. He brutally murdered Campira by strangling her after beating her severely with an unknown object, leaving multiple injuries on her face and body. In an attempt to make it appear as though Campira had taken her own life, Jorge cut a lock of her hair, placed her body on the bed, covered it with a blanket, and left the gas stove on. He even placed a portrait of Campira's late ex-husband in her hand to create the illusion that memories of him had driven her to suicide. Around 8:30 p.m., Jorge packed his belongings and left the house. On the night of January 1, 2017, Margarita tried to contact her daughter Campira to wish her a happy new year, but was unable to reach her. She then called her son Gabriel, who was in the same city as Campira, and asked him to check on her. When Gabriel arrived at his sister's house, he was immediately hit with a strong smell of gas. After turning off the gas burners, he began searching for Campira and was shocked to find her body on the couch, bearing signs of a brutal beating on her face. As Gabriel threw off the blanket covering his sister's body, he was horrified by what he saw. Campira was wearing only her underwear, and her body was covered in numerous bruises. Several details caught his attention. There were drops of blood around her, although her body in underwear appeared clean, as if she had recently bathed. Additionally, Campira's head was almost completely shaved, which struck Gabriel as strange, as his sister was known to take great care of her hair. Gabriel reported the incident to the police and then called his mother to break the news to Margarita. Paramedics and police arrived, confirmed Campira's death, and restricted access to the scene. The family was stunned by grief, struggling to come to terms with what happened. Their eyes reflected sadness and a glimmer of hope for justice. The investigation was complicated by inconsistencies between the crime scene and the initial assumption of suicide. The police meticulously examined every detail to unravel the truth. The police initially suspected suicide, but Campira's family disputed this, finding it impossible to believe that a young, cheerful woman would take such a drastic step. Campira's family was convinced that her death was not a suicide, but a violent crime. A strand of hair found on her body that did not match anyone in the house reinforced their suspicions. They demanded a more thorough investigation, which was granted. A second forensic examination confirmed their fears, revealing that Campira was strangled and that the suicide scene was staged. The evidence included marks on her trachea and neck, bruises indicating a beating, and the absence of a strand of hair. The police launched an investigation, and Campira's aunt, Sandra, worked with the deputy prosecutor to have the case transferred to the prosecutor's office. However, progress was slow. Later, Sandra was called back to the prosecutor's office and informed that she and her brother, Gabriel, could be plaintiffs in the case. Campira's children were left with their grandmother after the tragedy. To shield them from painful memories, they were transferred to a new school. However, time alone didn't heal their wounds. 2 months later, the family was allowed to visit the apartment where Campira's body was found, collecting her belongings and possibly uncovering clues. Her laptop was found, but its data had been deleted. Fortunately, her iPad was password protected, and the last photos she took before her death were recovered. One disturbing photo showed Campira lying next to Jorge on the same sofa where her body was later found. Further investigation of the photos revealed more evidence. In one image, Jorge was seen holding a skull-shaped container that was later discovered in the apartment's freezer. He was also shown strangling Campira with one hand. Drawers in the desk yielded sketches of tattoos Jorge planned to get, further hinting at his possible involvement in the crime. The public was outraged when Jorge was released on bail in 2009, sparking widespread anger. Many realized that if he had been detained earlier, the young women might still be alive. The Campira and Young families continued to demand justice for their loved ones on social media, gathering over 13,000 supporters on a memorial page. 10 months after his escape, Jorge was finally caught on October 24, 2017. His arrest was unexpected, occurring during a routine patrol by the National Civilian Police in Livingston, Guatemala. The officers were patrolling the streets when they noticed a suspicious man who appeared to be homeless. A routine check of his documents and fingerprints revealed a shocking truth. the man was on the international wanted list with a high danger level. Jorge was immediately arrested and taken to the immigration center in Guatemala City, where he was detained pending further action. The Guatemalan authorities quickly contacted their Mexican counterparts to initiate the extradition process. According to the head of the Guatemalan police, Pablo Castillo, Jorge had been hiding under a bridge in western Guatemala, living on the streets and relying on the kindness of tourists for survival. The next day, October 25th, Jorge was transported to the Mexican border city of Chicas, where he was handed over to the Mexican authorities. After crossing the border, Jorge was taken to Mexico City, marking the successful completion of the extradition process and the delivery of justice. Jorge appeared in court to face charges for his alleged crimes. A reporter managed to ask him a few questions, but Jorge responded with a complete denial of any wrongdoing, claiming he was unaware of the charges against him. This was despite being taken to court on October 26 for a preventive measure, specifically for the murder of Campura. During the trial, the prosecution presented strong evidence of Jorge's involvement in the crime. The investigation revealed that Jorge had brutally beaten the victim with an unknown object before strangling her to death. The prosecutor classified the crime as a feminicide, made worse by the fact that Jorge had a romantic relationship with the victim. The prosecutor also pointed out that Jorge had a prior conviction for theft and was possibly involved in the death of another ex-girlfriend, Jan. Despite the overwhelming evidence and arguments against Jorge, his lawyer proposed an alternative explanation that Jorge was mentally unstable and needed a psychological evaluation. This move came as the community awaited justice, expecting a suitable punishment for the perpetrator. After thoroughly examining the evidence, witness testimonies, and arguments, the judge turned his attention to Jorge and his lawyer. He asked how long it would take to complete the psychological evaluation. Following a consultation, Jorge's lawyer agreed that Jorge would attend all subsequent court hearings. Upon reviewing all materials and considering both sides, the judge rendered a verdict. There was sufficient evidence from the prosecutor to hold Jorge accountable for his crimes. The court ordered the investigation to continue and gave a 4-month deadline to gather new evidence. Meanwhile, Jorge was taken into custody and held at a pre-trial detention center. Despite Jorge's arrest and guilty verdict, the Campura and Jan families faced a lengthy and challenging process ahead. In August 2019, an oral hearing was held in Jorge's case. His lawyer asked the court to disregard the videos that showed Jorge entering and leaving Campura's house on the day she was murdered. They claimed that these videos were incomplete, taken from a 30-hour recording at the crime scene, and could not be used to prove Jorge's guilt. The videos had been given to the victim's family by a neighbor who recorded them. The family then passed them on to the police, who brought only partial recordings to court. The police had lost the original disc. Jorge's lawyer alleged that the Mexico City prosecutor's office had concealed this information, which only came to light on the day of the hearing. The defense lawyer argued that the materials used to obtain the arrest warrant were unlawful. Specifically, the lawyer claimed that a key video was given to the Campura family rather than the judicial authorities, and therefore could not be used as evidence. Despite this, the supervisory judge rejected the defense's petition after considering the prosecution's arguments and the testimony of Campura's friends and neighbors. Additionally, the court considered 2 witness statements, but did not accept them as evidence. The case proceeded, and Jorge was allowed to appeal the decision and present the same arguments again. Meanwhile, the Young family was dealing with their own separate case. A ban on violence against women was established in Mexico City, thanks in part to advocacy from several groups, including the Mexican Institute of Human Rights and Democracy and the Center for Justice. This new decree was influenced by multiple high-profile crimes, including the murder of Jan. As a result, her case was forwarded to a Mexico City court for trial. Nearly 7 years after Yang's murder, charges were formally brought against her suspected killer, Jorge, in May 2021. Shortly thereafter, a judge ordered his arrest for his role in her murder. Despite these developments, Jorge's defense team was able to significantly slow down the investigation and prosecution. 9 years after Yang's death, Jorge Humberto Martinez Cortez was sentenced to 52 years and 6 months in prison in November 2023 for taking Yang's life. While the Young family has finally received justice, Campira's family still faces a lengthy process. A trial had been scheduled for April 2022 at the detention center where Jorge was being held. Activists were resolute that this time the perpetrator would not evade accountability. Jorge's lawyers have successfully delayed the hearing once again, which was set to take place on January 29, 2024. Over 50 witnesses were expected to be called to testify, but for now, there is no update on the status of the hearing in the media. Jorge's family remains hopeful that he will eventually be held accountable for his actions. While nothing can bring Campira back, they seek justice and want to ensure that her death does not go unpunished. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Graciela Graciela. Graciela Graciela was born on October 6, 19, in Mexico, to a working-class family who sought a better future for their children. To achieve this, her parents made the decision to immigrate to the United States, ultimately settling in Hermiston, Oregon. As Graciela was very young at the time of the move, she has no recollection of the challenges associated with relocating. Upon reaching school age, Graciela attended Umatilla High School, an institution that predominantly served students from low-income backgrounds. The school provided all students with free meals, reflecting the socioeconomic status of its student body, of which 66% were Hispanic. It was here that Graciela's sociable nature and innate charm enabled her to effortlessly form friendships among her peers. After graduating, she proceeded to enroll in the business department at Blue Mountain College. From a young age, Graciela had always dreamed of becoming a hairstylist and owning her own beauty salon. With determination and hard work, she believed she could make her dreams a reality. By February 2006, she had achieved her goal and became the owner of Cuz Beauty Salon. Graciela's talent and charisma quickly made her a well-known figure in society. As the salon's owner, she always presented herself well, which added to the salon's positive image. Her passion for her job and understanding of the latest beauty trends ensured a steady stream of clients. Over time, some of these clients became close friends, who were always welcome at her home. Graciela was highly respected in the town, not only for her professional success but also for her interesting and happy personal life. Her first love, with whom she had 2 daughters, Annabelle and Gabriela, also known as Gabby, was someone she met in her youth. Although the relationship didn't last long, and the father of her children left the family, Graciela didn't let this setback hold her back. Instead, she focused on self-improvement and continued to move forward as a single mother. Graciela later earned a degree in cosmetology. She then met a kind-hearted man of Mexican descent named Romero Sanchez, and they got married. Her children from a previous relationship reported that she never regretted this decision. Her husband was caring not only to her but also to her children, treating them as his own. The family later welcomed 2 more children, Arthur and Jacob. Although he had biological sons, Graciela's husband still affectionately referred to Annabelle and Gabriela as his girls. Gabby considered her stepfather to be her real father, as he consistently supported, protected, and cared for them. The couple prioritized keeping their family united and happy, raising 4 children together. This did not deter Graciela from pursuing her passion. Instead, she would often take her children with her to professional meetings. The family developed a lovely tradition of traveling together, exploring new cities, local attractions, and cultural features. They also prioritized staying connected to their roots, frequently visiting Mexico and enjoying quality time together. Everyone made a genuine effort to make each other happy. However, after 17 years of marriage, the couple decided to separate. Graciela and her ex-husband chose not to burden each other with their dwindling feelings, opting to preserve the respectful relationship they had built over the years. Even after the divorce, they maintained a warm and strong connection. The father remained involved in the children's lives, regularly seeing them and sharing custody of their youngest son with Graciela. The other children were grown and lived on their own, but they remained close to their parents. They would get together to celebrate holidays and often sought each other's advice. Graciela handled her divorce well, remaining optimistic and confident, thanks in part to her ex-husband's kind and understanding behavior during this challenging time. On November 9, 2019, Romero made an unexpected visit to Annabelle, Graciela's eldest daughter. Annabelle was surprised to see her mother's new husband show up unexpectedly. Romero told Annabelle that Graciela had disappeared. According to Romero, he and Graciela had met with Jacob the previous night. Afterward, Romero returned home and went to bed beside Graciela, who was already asleep. However, when he woke up in the morning, Graciela was gone. He searched the house but couldn't find her. Romero tried to contact Graciela by calling and texting her, but she didn't respond. He went to Annabelle's place hoping she might have some information about Graciela's disappearance. Annabelle, however, had no idea where her mother was. She was shocked not only by the news of her mother's disappearance but also by Romero's reaction. He was in tears and seemed genuinely upset. Annabelle found this odd because Romero had never shown any strong emotions around them before, only indifference. Romero mentioned that Graciela had been acting strangely and might have found someone else. He admitted she might have needed a break from their relationship and wasn't sure if she was truly happy with him. However, Annabelle found his words insincere and his tears overly dramatic. She started to worry about her mother and found Romero's behavior suspicious. Romero had previously avoided talking to Graciela's children, but suddenly reached out to them. After he left, Annabelle told the rest of the family what happened. They gathered at Graciela's house to figure out what was going on. Her car was still parked in the driveway, which was unusual since she would have likely taken it if she were leaving Romero. The house was also spotlessly tidy, which was out of character for Graciela, who preferred a more creative and chaotic space. If she were planning to leave, her belongings would have been scattered around the room. Graciela spent a considerable amount of time in front of the mirror, carefully selecting an outfit for the day. However, she surprisingly left all her treasured jewelry at home, including her favorite rings and necklaces that she wore daily. This unusual behavior raised concerns among her family members, who couldn't help but imagine worst-case scenarios, including the possibility of her fleeing. While searching the house, Gabby stumbled upon something peculiar, a large, heavy blanket in the washing machine. This was unusual because their mother, Graciela, always emphasized the importance of not overloading appliances. It was likely that Romero, who normally didn't participate in household chores, had washed the blanket. This sparked suspicion that he might be trying to conceal something. It was later discovered that along with Graciela, several important items had gone missing from the house, including her passport, driver's license, and mobile phone. On November 11th, Annabelle went to the police station to report her mother, Graciela, missing. However, she was surprised to find that Romero, Graciela's husband, had not informed the police about her disappearance, despite knowing about it since November 9th or possibly earlier. As a result, Annabelle became the first person to file a missing person report for her mother. Romero's distant personality had been a concern for Graciela's family since they met him. Graciela had met Romero at her beauty salon, where he was a client, after her divorce. Their initial friendship eventually developed into a romantic relationship. However, when Graciela introduced Romero to her family, they noticed his aloof and cold demeanor. Annabelle and her sister, Gabby, tried several times to connect with Romero, but he did not reciprocate, leaving Graciella's children puzzled by his behavior. They initially attributed it to individual personality differences, especially compared to their mother's previous relationships. They were eager to understand their mother's partner and what motivated him. At times, he seemed strange and aloof to them, and they struggled to comprehend how someone as lively and joyful as their mother could be drawn to someone so serious and reserved. Despite their reservations, they respected her decision. When their mother shared the news of her upcoming wedding, everyone rallied around her, particularly the girls, who wanted to see her happy and loved. On the wedding day, guests couldn't help but notice Romero's haughty demeanor and restraint. Some even perceived him as excessively possessive, as he dominated the bride's attention. When Graciella's young children came to congratulate the newlyweds, Romero responded with disdain rather than warmth and affection, making it clear that he didn't want to share his wife's attention with anyone, not even her own family. After that, Graciella's relatives struggled to hide their genuine opinions about Romero. Annabelle even went so far as to say she didn't consider him a stepfather, let alone a father figure. The family simply wanted to have a normal relationship, like those found in any civilized household. Following the wedding, Graciella and Romero moved in together, along with her youngest son Jacob, into Graciella's home. Jacob shared that shortly after the wedding, Romero started behaving as if he was the sole owner of the house. The boy recalled that the initial honeymoon phase was brief, and soon the family started to fall apart. He observed that his mother initially tried to establish personal boundaries, but being non-confrontational, she quickly gave in to Romero's demands. This seemed to suit Romero, who had a quick temper and never apologized first. To avoid creating tension in the household, Graciella often conceded to Romero's wishes. As time went on, it seemed she realized she had rushed into the marriage without fully thinking it through. In private conversations, Graciella confessed to feeling trapped and suffocated in the relationship. Her husband exerted control over her, never allowing her to go anywhere alone. Despite this, she never expressed any desire to leave the abusive relationship, suggesting she was still in love with Romero. Everyone realized that Graciella was in a relationship with the wrong person. It became apparent that her partner, Romero, was jobless and financially dependent on her. The Graciella family, who valued hard work, found it frustrating that Romero was always by Graciella's side without any apparent reason. Romero was a master manipulator who kept a close eye on Graciella, monitoring her interactions, including her friendships with other women. He would either prevent her from going out or show up unexpectedly, as if checking on her loyalty. His extreme jealousy was suffocating. Graciella felt embarrassed by his behavior, which led her to isolate herself socially, only interacting with her family. This had a negative impact on her professional life, as her job required frequent client meetings and attending industry events. Those close to Graciella noticed a significant change in her demeanor. She looked sad, worn out, and had lost her usual cheerfulness. It was clear that she was unhappy. Even her children observed the changes in her mood and appearance, as well as her loss of independence. They discussed their concerns among themselves and concluded that, although they didn't like Romero, he was Graciella's choice, and they had to respect her decisions. Other relatives shared the family's distrust of Romero. However, no one knew how to intervene or offer support. The couple's issues were serious enough to require professional help. Gabby had once suggested this to her mother, but Graciella insisted on handling her personal life independently. In 2018, Graciella suddenly announced that she would relocate her beauty salon to her home, citing convenience. Her family was skeptical, as she had never mentioned this plan before, despite running the salon for 12 years. Some clients noted that Romero often hung around the salon, creating tension and disrupting the usually warm atmosphere. While some thought Graciela made the move to solve a problem, others suspected that her jealous husband was behind the decision. Despite the initial doubts, Graciela remained enthusiastic about the change, saying it allowed her to spend more time with Jacob and Romero. By the end of 2018, she and her husband were remodeling a room for the salon, but the project took longer than expected and wasn't completed until May 2019. Although the salon was closed temporarily, Graciela's reputation remained intact, and rumors of the studio's reopening attracted a long queue of clients, including new ones, months in advance. Graciela was thrilled with her professional success but became increasingly private about her personal life. Return to the moment before of Graciela's disappearance. Another incident raised concerns about Graciela's safety. She asked her daughter Gabby to pick her up, which was unusual. But she claimed everything was fine and said she was just having a disagreement with her husband. When they met up, they spent time together and Graciela seemed to relax. She smiled and told Gabby not to worry, saying that couples' arguments are normal and can actually bring people closer together. Despite this, Gabby couldn't shake off her worries and remained uneasy about her mother's situation. After Annabelle contacted the police, the relationship between Graciela's family and Romero rapidly deteriorated. He offered an explanation for his wife's disappearance, suggesting that she might have wanted some time alone or could have left with another man, and he believed she would soon return. This was his standard response to anyone inquiring about the situation. However, the police took the report seriously and initiated an investigation, considering the possibility that Graciela could have been a victim of a crime. They began by searching her home, where they found that only a few personal items were missing, with nothing else seeming out of the ordinary. The police also interviewed Graciela's children, her husband, and others close to the family, including her ex-husband. Although everyone expressed skepticism about Romero's behavior, the investigation did not uncover any significant information. Romero cooperated with the detectives, allowing them to search his home, participating in interrogations, providing his DNA, and undergoing a polygraph test. Despite his cooperation, the police did not have sufficient grounds to arrest him, so the investigation continued. Analysis of Graciela's phone records revealed her last known location was near a bridge in Washington on November 9 at 12:30 p.m., when the signal stopped after her phone was turned off. Her bank accounts and social media remained inactive. Despite questioning hundreds of witnesses and checking all her frequent locations, investigators found no signs of her. The investigation deemed her disappearance suspicious due to the complete lack of evidence. For months into the investigation, the Hermiston police publicly stated that they had no confirmed information about Graciela's last sighting. Although Romero didn't report Graciela missing, the authorities didn't accuse him of anything. The police's stance frustrated Graciela's relatives, causing them to reduce communication with law enforcement. The family eventually stopped receiving weekly updates, forcing Graciela's children to contact the police station directly for information. As of March 2020, there were no new developments in Graciela's case. In an effort to revive the investigation, Graciela's family reached out to the media, hoping to raise public awareness and gather information. They believed even small details could be crucial. Gabby, a family member, expressed the family's frustration and disappointment with the police's lack of progress in the case. The Graciela family urged investigators to focus on finding Graciela, as they suspected foul play due to the state of her belongings and the unusual circumstances at home. It was unclear who would harm her, as she had no known enemies. Her family knew she wouldn't leave without contacting them, and the lack of communication suggested something was seriously wrong. The family also requested a new detective team, citing concerns of bias and collusion with Romero, whom they believed was somehow connected to the case. The family pointed out numerous inconsistencies in the investigation. It was found that Romero's phone had been turned off on the day his wife went missing, and his actions didn't seem like those of someone who was worried about a loved one disappearing suddenly. The Graciela family asked for Romero to be arrested. Police Chief Jason Edmiston quickly responded to these claims. He agreed that Mrs. Graciela's disappearance seemed suspicious and might involve something criminal. He said this was just one idea, but promised that the investigation would stay fair and be based on evidence and facts. Edmiston also denied that Romero had any connections to the police that might affect the case. Edmiston mentioned that false information was spreading and making the investigation harder. He said the case was ongoing and that some information had to be kept secret. The police also asked the FBI for help. Edmiston expressed frustration that people were criticizing the police without understanding how complicated the law is. At the same time, Gabby started a fundraiser to hire a private investigator. This move was seen as criticism of how the police were handling the case, suggesting they weren't doing their job well. 1 year after Graciela's disappearance, her family and friends held a memorial event to honor her memory and pray for her safe return. They lit candles and posted signs outside the police station, urging authorities to continue searching for her. In September 2023, a significant development in the case occurred when Romero Sanchez, Graciela's husband, was severely injured in an attack. There was speculation that Mason Graciela, Graciela's brother, was involved in the incident, but details and any potential consequences for Mason were not disclosed. It appeared that Graciela's family had become frustrated with the police's lack of progress in investigating Romero, leading to a potentially frightening outcome. Graciela's disappearance remains an unsolved mystery, leaving her family in unbearable uncertainty that's taking a devastating toll on their health. Her children are left with only prayers, hoping for clarity and justice, unsure if she's alive. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Nicole Peets. Nicole Peets was born on February 26, 1973, in King County, Washington. Her parents, who later divorced while Nicole was still in school, had her as their only child together. During her high school years, Nicole was a lively and sociable individual who participated in sports and had a charming personality. She had many friends and enjoyed trips to the countryside, with Lake Sammamish, located east of Seattle, being her favorite vacation spot. She spent her summer vacations there every year. After high school, Nicole attended Western Washington College, where she studied public relations. Alongside her studies, she continued to engage in sports and maintained an excellent physical shape. She decided to turn her passion for sports into a career and landed a job as a trainer at a local sports club. There, she quickly earned the respect of her colleagues and gained a loyal client base who regularly attended her group classes. At the same time, Nicole pursued higher education in management and eventually secured a job at a major mobile communications company. Outwardly, Nicole appeared to be a friendly and sociable person who was always willing to help others. However, few people realized that she was hiding a great deal of pain and misery behind this facade. As a teenager, Nicole struggled with addiction after her parents got divorced. This event was traumatic for her fragile and still developing psyche, leading her to rebel and seek solace in bad company and alcohol. Unfortunately, this led to a severe addiction that lasted for several years and had a devastating impact on Nicole's physical and mental health. Her mother, Gail, was often away from home due to her demanding job as a flight attendant and didn't notice the warning signs. Nicole lived with her elderly grandmother, who also didn't initially realize that her granddaughter was regularly consuming alcohol. By the time the truth came to light, the damage had already been done. Fortunately, Nicole's mother was there to support her. Gail not only arranged for Nicole to receive therapy but also attended AA meetings with her, helping her to open up and overcome her addiction. By that time, Gail had remarried, and her new partner, Rod, was very supportive of Nicole. He treated her like his own daughter and believed she could overcome her addiction. Nicole took therapy seriously, attending every session, and soon overcame her addiction. However, the effects of alcohol on her health were significant. Nicole developed severe pancreas problems, requiring surgery. More devastatingly, her early alcohol abuse damaged her reproductive system, rendering her unable to have children. After overcoming her addiction in the mid-1990s, Nicole met her future husband, David, at her new job at a sports club. David, a regular at the club, was a tall, handsome young man who was diligent about his fitness routine. He was immediately drawn to Nicole, and she, too, noticed the attractive young man and became interested. Although David was 4 years younger than Nicole, the age difference did not bother them. The relationship between Nicole and David gradually developed into a romantic one, which lasted almost 8 years before they got married in 2002. Their intimate wedding ceremony in Hawaii was attended only by their closest friends and family. After exchanging their vows, they moved to a quiet town called Linwood in Washington State, where they bought a home and began their new life together. Nicole was known for being sociable, friendly, and had a talent for building relationships. She quickly formed close bonds with the neighbors and had a passion for animals, with multiple dogs being part of the family. Because unable to have children of her own, she directed her maternal instincts towards her pets. David and Nicole were viewed as the epitome of a happy married couple, with a seemingly perfect relationship that brought them joy. One of Nicole's many hobbies was cooking, and she excelled at it. She delighted her husband and impressed guests with her culinary skills, taking pleasure in sharing meals and company with those she loved. Tragedy struck when Nicole disappeared on the eve of her 33rd birthday in 2006. Nicole failed to report to work and was unreachable by her family throughout the day. Her mother, Gail, tried to contact her but was unsuccessful, prompting her to alert David, Nicole's husband, to see if he knew what was going on. However, David had also been unable to reach Nicole. When questioned, David revealed that he and Nicole had argued the previous day, and when she didn't answer her phone the next day, he assumed she was still upset. He waited until evening to attempt to apologize, only to realize Nicole was still missing. It wasn't until the evening of the second day, when Nicole still hadn't contacted her family and her phone was still unreachable, that the police decided to launch a search. They began by investigating the last known location where Nicole was seen, her home with David. An investigation of the room where Nicole Peets was last seen found no signs of evidence of kidnapping. The absence of her personal car suggested that she might have simply left on her own. The family turned to social media to spread the word and ask for help in finding their daughter. They also immediately flew to Linwood, where they started their own search efforts. They put up posters with her picture and spoke to people who knew her, hoping someone might have information about her whereabouts. The police searched for Nicole and her car, trying to determine the route she took on the day she disappeared. Tragically, the worst fears were confirmed a few days later when a jogger discovered a young woman's body in a local park area. The jogger had taken an unusual route that morning. It was there that he stumbled upon something suspicious in the shrubbery, which turned out to be a brutally mutilated, naked body. The police were immediately notified, and forensic experts suggested that the crime was violent due to the presence of severe blunt force trauma and the lack of clothing. The autopsy revealed extensive bruising, abrasions, and blunt force injuries, indicating that the victim had been severely beaten before her death. The cause of death was asphyxiation by strangulation, and it appeared that the killer had used their bare hands. Police initially believed the body they found was that of Nicole Peets, a young woman who had gone missing several days earlier and had been the subject of a citywide search. Her identity was confirmed by her family as Nicole. When Nicole's mother, Gail, saw her daughter's body at the morgue, she was overcome with grief and needed medical attention. Her husband, Rod, was also devastated, but his reaction seemed a bit unusual to some. He didn't seem truly distraught and his emotions seemed forced. However, at that time no one paid much attention to this, because everyone coped with the tragedy in their own way. Police believe the missing car was the primary target of the attack and would hold key evidence. They released a description of the gray Volkswagen Polo to the media, asking for tips. Weeks later, a security guard found the car in a parking lot on the outskirts of the city, noticing it had been parked there for an extended period. The police took the car for a thorough examination, hoping to find evidence and clues that would lead them to the perpetrator and help reconstruct the crime scene. However, their search yielded nothing. The only fingerprints and DNA found in the car belonged to Nicole and her husband, who occasionally drove the vehicle. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, the investigators were reluctant to return the car to David. In addition, the victim's lack of clothes raised questions. The numerous injuries suggested a rage-driven attack, possibly a personal vendetta. However, Nicole was known for her kind nature and had no known enemies. The investigation into this complex case was on the verge of going cold, with no new leads or directions to pursue after nearly a year. The lack of witnesses and surveillance cameras in the parking lot where the car was abandoned made it difficult to gather evidence. However, one peculiar detail stood out. The driver's seat was positioned in a way that suggested the person driving the car was significantly taller and larger than the victim. The police obtained footage from the gas station security cameras, but the contents remained unclear. Frustrated by the lack of progress and the fact that the killer was still at large, Nicole's parents took matters into their own hands. They hired a private investigator to gather information and verify their suspicions, and offered a $10,000 reward to anyone who could provide useful information about the case. David, the husband of the victim, initially showed interest in the investigation, but his enthusiasm waned after 6 months. He eventually remarried, having a child with his new wife. This news was devastating for Gail, the victim's mother, as her daughter had been unable to have children, and David had often criticized her for this. Gail repeatedly suggested that David might be the culprit, but many people believed Gail was motivated by resentment. The police seemed to dismiss this theory altogether. However, 6 years after the crime, David was taken into custody as the prime suspect. One unusual circumstance was a gas station security footage that captured a man using Nicole credit card. The footage appeared to show a man resembling David, but he wore a head covering and dark glasses, making a positive identification impossible. Although this recording was not definitive proof, it was still added to the case file. Another discrepancy was the missing wedding ring, which Nicole never removed from her finger. Initially, investigators believed the killer might have taken it, but they found the ring in a box on the dressing table in Nicole's home. During the examination of Nicole's body, experts found a dental mouth guard in her mouth. This device was specifically designed to prevent teeth grinding, a condition known as bruxism, which Nicole experienced during sleep. The mouth guard had been prescribed to her shortly before her death due to her nervousness, which caused involuntary muscle spasms in her jaw. These spasms had led to the erosion of her tooth enamel and chipping of her teeth. The investigation concluded that Nicole was likely killed in her own bed while she was still asleep. This theory was supported by the fact that she was not wearing any clothes and her body was clean, with no signs of a struggle. Additionally, Nicole's face was free of makeup. The mouth guard found at the scene was not a significant factor, as Nicole had only recently started using it. Moreover, forensic experts analyzed the driver's seat in the car and found that the last person to sit behind the wheel had the same physical characteristics as David, Nicole's husband. The car only had fingerprints belonging to David and Nicole, suggesting that no one else had been in the vehicle. A crucial discovery was made possible by advances in technology. The killer had attempted to mislead the investigation by using Nicole's phone in various parts of the city. However, at the same locations and times, David's phone was also active, revealing a suspicious coincidence. Furthermore, it was discovered that David had a motive for the crime, and the seemingly perfect family was actually facing a severe crisis. Nicole was juggling multiple responsibilities, studying, working 2 jobs, and supporting others struggling with addiction. Meanwhile, her husband led a carefree life, unable to hold down a job and spending most of his time in bars and clubs. He would often use Nicole's earnings to fund his nightlife, including affairs with other women. Nicole tried to intervene in her husband's addiction, suggesting AA meetings, but he dismissed her concerns. The situation worsened as David's infidelity was revealed. After Nicole's sudden and mysterious death, David hastily filed for a large insurance payout and began a new relationship. It was later discovered that David had been having an affair with a woman named Jane for several months prior to Nicole's death. While Nicole was working or studying, David would often meet Jane at bars and clubs. Just before Nicole's birthday, David brought Jane to their home, where Nicole unexpectedly walked in on them. This led to a heated argument between Nicole and David. Nicole confided in her mother about the incident just days before she mysteriously vanished. Gail had her suspicions about her son-in-law from the start, but the police claimed they didn't have enough evidence to arrest him. As a result, the case was closed, and the family was left in the dark about the investigation. Over time, they lost hope that the person responsible would be held accountable. After his wife's death, David received a significant insurance payout, which he spent on lavish gifts for his mistress, Jane. Gail believed that Jane might have been involved in the crime, but she was only questioned as a witness due to lack of evidence. In 2013, David went to court, still denying any involvement in his wife's death. His lawyers initially argued that the evidence against him was circumstantial and not conclusive. However, as the prosecution presented more incriminating evidence, the defense shifted their strategy. They portrayed David as a victim, suggesting that his wife, Nicole, had become unbearable to live with due to her addiction to pain pills and drinking. The claims that Nicole was unstable were unfounded and disputed by everyone who knew her. Even if she had lost control, that would not have justified David's brutal murder of his wife. Ultimately, David's guilt was proven beyond a doubt, and he received the maximum sentence allowed by state law. David was sentenced to 18 years in prison, but he will be eligible for parole in 2025 after serving 2/3 of his sentence. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Stephanie Scott. Stephanie Scott was a 26-year-old kind and intelligent young woman with a passion for education, much like her father, Robert. As a teacher, she enjoyed teaching English and drama at Leeton High School, a job that gave her a great sense of pride and fulfillment. She was known for her enthusiasm, love for learning, and beautiful smile. Stephanie and Aaron's friendship, formed in their youth, blossomed into romance as they entered adulthood. They began dating in 2012 and, after several years of building a life together, decided to take the next step and get married. As the big day, April 11, 2015, was just around the corner, the wedding preparations were well underway. With everything set and almost complete, from catering and decor to travel plans, all they needed to finalize was a dress rehearsal for their special day, dance lessons, and romantic honeymoon arrangements. In early April, Aaron invited Stephanie to a party out of town, but she declined, opting to stay behind and complete some deadline tasks, including preparing lesson plans for her upcoming absence. On Easter Sunday, April 5, 2015, Stephanie went to her school in Leeton, New South Wales, to drop off some homework with a substitute teacher. She parked her car on the street and met a colleague who lived nearby. Together, they opened the school gates and went inside. After locking the gates behind them, Stephanie went to the English department office, where she sent a confirmation email to a bus company about transportation for her wedding guests. After working for a couple more hours, Stephanie felt relieved that she had completed all her tasks. She left the administrative building and headed towards the gates. Meanwhile, Aaron was expecting Stephanie to be away for a few hours, but as the evening approached, he began to worry because he hadn't heard from her. On April 5th, she didn't reply to his messages. When he returned home after 7 p.m., he found that Stephanie was still not there, and her car was missing from the street. At first, Aaron tried to reassure himself that Stephanie might be feeling overwhelmed by the upcoming wedding and her responsibilities as a teacher, and that she just needed some time to herself. Aaron became increasingly concerned as hours passed. As his worry grew, he sent her another text in the morning, then called her family. After Stephanie's disappearance exceeded 24 hours, Aaron reported her missing at the Leeton police station. The police investigation revealed her car was also missing, leading them to speculate she may have been in an accident or stranded while driving away from Leeton High School. To assist in the search, helicopters were deployed and officers were sent to the school. The police investigation was hindered by the limited number of people at the school on Easter Sunday, but this also helped rule out hundreds of suspects. According to the report, Stephanie had deactivated and reactivated the classroom alarm system between 1:30 p.m. and 1:38 p.m. Unfortunately, this was the only concrete detail the police could gather. Attempts to track Stephanie's phone were unsuccessful, as it was turned off. Her bank accounts and social media showed no activity after Saturday, April 4th. A witness who was near Leeton High School on Easter Sunday reported hearing unusual noises around 2 p.m., including rustling and dragging sounds. At the time, the witness saw Stephanie's car parked under a covered walkway, but didn't think much of it. However, the car was later found to be missing. A school employee who was questioned by detectives reported an unusual conversation he had with one of the school's cleaners the day after Stephanie's disappearance. The employee asked the cleaner when he last saw Stephanie, and the cleaner replied that he hadn't seen her on the day she went missing. When questioned about the possibility of Stephanie running away due to wedding stress, Vincent Stanford, the 24-year-old cleaner, responded with a nervous laugh. The witness who observed this interaction also noticed that Vincent had scratches on his face. As a result, the police decided to investigate further and asked Vincent for more information. During the brief conversation with detectives, Vincent explained that he had stopped by the school to empty the trash cans, despite not being scheduled to work that day. He claimed he was in a hurry to buy groceries and only stayed for a short time. Vincent stated that he did not see Stephanie during his visit. He also reported leaving the school around 3 p.m. to go to his usual store. The police investigation took a significant turn when they discovered that the store Vincent claimed to have visited on the specified date was actually closed. This raised suspicions about Vincent's alibi, and investigators decided to question him further. A search of Vincent's home, with his mother's consent, led to the discovery of a key set matching the description of Stephanie Scott's keys. The search of Vincent's home and belongings yielded additional evidence, including several MDF panels in the back seat of his car, which appeared to be stained with blood. Police also noticed tire tracks in front of the house that didn't match Vincent's vehicle. A used condom was found on the ground near the house, with its wrapper discovered in Vincent's bedroom. When questioned about his whereabouts on the day of the murder, Vincent said he was out taking photos. He pointed to a camera in his car as proof, but this explanation only added to the suspicion surrounding him. Detectives obtained permission from Vincent to view the camera. When they turned it on, they saw a disturbing photo of a charred woman's corpse in a wooded area. Vincent attempted to downplay the image, claiming it was a still from a movie he had filmed that he thought was humorous. However, the police quickly realized that the photo was, in fact, a crime scene image of Stephanie Scott. Vincent Stanford, a 24-year-old cleaner at Leon High School, was immediately taken into custody. A search of Vincent's phone and laptop uncovered disturbing photos, including images of young girls and women he had been stalking. A new witness came forward on April 17th, reporting that they saw a car near a canal on Easter Sunday at around 4 p.m. The witness described a man getting out of the car and throwing something that looked like a laptop into the water before driving away. The police retrieved the laptop from the canal and confirmed that it belonged to Stephanie. Meanwhile, divers searched the New South Wales River area for her body. As the search continued, police thoroughly searched fields and vineyards near where Stephanie's car was found earlier in the week, as well as the canal where the laptop was discovered. In a surprising turn of events, Vincent, who was already in custody, requested to speak with the police. He provided detailed information about the crime, including the location of Stephanie's body. According to Vincent, on the day of the incident, Stephanie was working on a computer in the upstairs teacher's room with her door open. Vincent claimed that he was cleaning the area and needed to take some bins upstairs, which is when he encountered Stephanie. Vincent told detectives that he acted on a sudden urge to kill Stephanie by retrieving a kit containing handcuffs, Viagra, a knife, and cleaning supplies from his home. He had also researched violent crimes online. Upon returning, he found Stephanie preparing to leave and, as she walked by, she smiled and wished him a happy Easter. Vincent then grabbed her and dragged her into a storage room. When questioned about the scratches on his face, Vincent attributed them to Stephanie's microphone and her fingernails as she defended herself. He described grabbing her from behind, covering her mouth and wrapping his arm around her waist, before dragging her to the storage room. Once inside, he slammed the door shut, threw her to the ground, and punched her repeatedly. Vincent stabbed Stephanie to death, motivated by a twisted pleasure in the act rather than hatred. He acknowledged a history of violent thoughts and suspected underlying psychological issues. Afterwards, he calmly returned home to eat and drink, leaving her body in the storage room. Vincent returned to the school and put Stephanie's body in the trunk of her car. He then drove the car to his home and parked it on the street. The next day, Easter Monday, Vincent drove the car to a national park. There, he removed Stephanie's body from the trunk and left it on the ground. He observed that her face was severely bruised and swollen, with a large bruise under her eye. Vincent covered the body with branches and doused it with gasoline. He then used a match to set the body on fire and discarded the match. For a short time, Vincent stayed at the scene, taking several photos of Stephanie's body with his camera. He waited for a few minutes to ensure the fire was burning steadily before leaving. Afterward, he abandoned Stephanie's car on a remote country road and walked back to town. Vincent denied brutally treating Stephanie, despite detectives knowing otherwise. He faced additional charges of severe harm and physical injury. Questioned about photos of the woman partially undressed, Vincent claimed he often removed her clothes, leaving her bra, which he kept as a souvenir. However, Vincent had actually sent the wedding and graduation rings to his twin brother, Marcus, in Adelaide. Marcus sold the stolen items at a jewelry store and destroyed Stephanie's driver's license after taking a photo of it. A 24-year-old man, identified as Marcus, was arrested at his home in the Adelaide Hills at 7 a.m. Marcus worked on a flower farm and was described by colleagues as quiet and reserved, rarely interacting with them outside of work. During the trial, Marcus Stanford was unrepresented by a lawyer. When the judge asked if there were any reasons he should not be sent to Leeton, Marcus responded in a strong Dutch accent that he had never been to Leeton and saw no reason to go. The search for Stephanie eventually came to a tragic end. While Vincent was still confessing to the crime, the police had already discovered Stephanie's body, just one day before her scheduled wedding date. A badly burned female body was found in a national park, approximately 60 miles from Leeton Middle School. A thorough investigation revealed that Stephanie had suffered a brutal attack, receiving 40 blows to the head, which ultimately led to her death. She had also been stabbed in the neck before her body was discarded and set on fire. Photographs found on Vincent's phone were identified as being of Stephanie, leaving no doubt about his guilt. Both Vincent and his brother Marcus were brought to trial. Initially, Vincent denied any involvement in the crime. Vincent Stanford was deemed a danger to society after undergoing psychological tests, which indicated he was a potential serial killer. He showed a disturbing lack of emotions and empathy, often reacting to serious situations with laughter and indifference. Further investigation into his past revealed several alarming incidents. Vincent was born in Australia, but his family relocated to the Netherlands when he was 3 years old. They later returned to New South Wales when he was 7. As a child, Vincent exhibited concerning behavior, including fantasizing about committing murder at the age of 12 and nearly strangling his teacher. His classmates described him as a psychopath, and he was eventually sent to a behavioral correction school due to his violent and disobedient behavior. Vincent would sneak into the women's restroom to secretly observe female students during lunch breaks. His phone contained 2,000 photos of a young girl and a diary documenting his observations, including following her home and recording her schedule. One entry read, "She's home alone at 15:40. Enough time to abduct." The investigation into Stephanie Scott's murder took a surprising turn when her killer's twin brother, Marcus Stanford, was found to be involved. A search of the Stanford home uncovered evidence, including Stephanie's blood on a knife and her bra. Marcus was sentenced to 15 months in prison for selling Stephanie's stolen jewelry and aiding his brother. After his release in October 2016, the Leeton community expressed outrage and made it clear Marcus was not welcome. A petition with over 60 signatures called for an appeal of the court's decision. Marcus briefly returned to Leeton before leaving the area, and his current whereabouts are unknown. Marcus has expressed genuine remorse for his past actions and has acknowledged that his behavior was reckless and regrettable. Since his release, he has made it clear that he intends to avoid trouble and move forward with his life. However, he also wants to maintain his distance from his twin brother, Vincent, and has no interest in rekindling their relationship. Vincent has been sentenced to life in prison for murder and 15 years for aggravated sexual assault, with both sentences effective as of April 8, 2015. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Nathan Peat. Nathan Peat was born on February 12, 1982, in Tamuning, a village on the island of Guam, in the Pacific Ocean. Nathan was part of a big, loving family with 3 brothers, Matthew, Anthony, and Eric, and a sister named Carmela. His family was close-knit, with all the children being helpful and supportive of their parents. Nathan was an exemplary child who rarely got into trouble, demonstrating care and kindness at home and being diligent in his studies at school. His sociable nature made him easy to get along with, and he had many friends. Nathan grew up near the ocean and developed a passion for swimming and surfing from a young age. He spent most of his free time at the beach, soaking up the sun and enjoying life. It was during his time at South High School that he met his future wife, Michelle, and Aunt Chuck. They were immediately drawn to each other and began spending all their time together, studying, preparing for classes, and helping with household chores. As they grew closer, their friendship blossomed into romance. Tragedy struck Michelle's family when she was 16, as her mother passed away. Michelle took on a maternal role, caring for her younger sister Melissa and managing the household. Nathan was supportive and helpful throughout this difficult time, assisting with childcare and other responsibilities. After graduating in 2000, Nathan proposed to Michelle, and she happily accepted. Due to financial constraints, they decided to forego a traditional wedding and instead moved in together with the blessing of their parents to start building a life together. Nathan got a job as a receptionist at a local hotel, earning a decent income. Like many young people, He and his partner Michelle were ambitious and had big plans for their future. They wanted their own home and independence. When their son Dion was born, Nathan's income was no longer enough to cover their expenses. To provide a better life for his family, Nathan decided to join the Air Force. After completing his training, Nathan was assigned to Elmendorf Air Base in Anchorage, Alaska. Although Michelle was left to care for their baby alone, the family's financial situation improved. Eventually, they were able to build their own home, where their second child, a daughter named Niara, was born. Nathan's military career took off, and he was able to provide for his family's needs. 6 years after getting engaged, Nathan and Michelle finally had a big wedding, achieving their long-held dreams. In 2006, Nathan was transferred to the Davis-Monthan military base in Arizona, where he was promoted to lead a team responsible for loading weapons onto a 10 Thunderbolt attack aircraft. He also received training in logistics and material management. Nathan was dedicated to his job and performed it with the best intentions, truly serving his country. A coworker described Nathan as a hard worker. In 2007, Nathan and his family relocated to Nellis Air Base near Las Vegas, Nevada. There, he took on a new role as a junior officer in charge of the supply section for combat aircraft maintenance. As Nathan's career grew, so did his family. He and his wife, Michelle, had 2 more sons, Drawn and David. Because Michelle fell in love with Las Vegas, and Nathan wanted to make her happy, so he chose a house in Las Vegas that's spacious and bright, house perfect for their large family. Initially, Michelle was overjoyed with the surprise, but as time passed, their expenses began to exceed Nathan's earnings, causing their financial happiness to dwindle. Financial struggles strained Nathan and Michelle's relationship. To improve their situation, Nathan enlisted in the military, despite the U.S. being at war with Iraq. His 6-month deployment led to significant financial improvements, bringing him a sense of satisfaction. After a brief rest, Pete returned to Iraq, leaving Michelle to care for their 4 children. The weight of this responsibility, combined with Nathan's prolonged absences, took a toll on Michelle's mental health. She became anxious about being alone and struggled to cope with a reduced standard of living. To alleviate her worries, Michelle started working at a corporate credit card telemarketing firm and attended an aesthetics school to develop her skills. However, when Nathan left for Iraq again, Michelle felt isolated and disenchanted. Her relationship with Nathan was strained, and she turned to a colleague, Michael Rudolph Rodriguez, a charismatic but untrustworthy individual with a questionable past. By the end of 2009, Nathan returned home, and it seemed that the time apart had affected his family relationships. Michelle had been leading a double life, and her intentions were not entirely pure. She had developed feelings for someone else, but she didn't want to lose her husband. To keep him, she tried to please him in every way, changing her appearance and behavior. Nathan was fascinated by the changes in Michelle, but he didn't suspect that something was amiss. He was happy to be back with his family and decided to stay for a while. The children had struggled in school without their father, and Nathan was determined to make up for lost time. To earn extra money, Nathan started working night shifts in Las Vegas and also began teaching baseball to young children privately. He developed a simplified training program that was well received. However, as the family's standard of living declined, Michelle's attitude towards Nathan changed. By Thanksgiving 2010, the tension was palpable. When Nathan's brother Eric and his wife Veronica visited, they were shocked by the change in they, sensing the strain between Nathan and Michelle. It appeared that Michelle and Nathan's feelings for each other had diminished significantly. They was having trouble concealing their personal and financial struggles from others. In fact, their pantry and refrigerator were nearly bare. A conversation between Michelle and Michael occurred on December 1, 2010, in a sequence of events that seemed unusual. At 11:12 p.m., Michael sent Michelle a text message, inquiring about her well-being and mentioning that they were nearing completion of the Van Dyke contract, which was due the following day. 2 minutes later, Michael sent a follow-up message, offering Michelle a chance to take a couple of days off to rest if she was still not feeling well. He emphasized that her contributions were highly valued. Michelle responded to Michael's messages at 11:19 p.m. She mentioned that her husband had just awakened her, informing her that he would be late that day, although she was unsure about the specifics. A few months before the tragedy, Michelle was not hesitant to leave her husband Nathan. She believed that a divorce would only lead to financial struggles and emotional distress. She also doubted that Nathan would forgive her and provide sufficient alimony to support a normal life. However, Michelle was aware of Nathan's military insurance policy, which would pay out approximately $650,000 in the event of his death. This thing weighed heavily on her mind. Michelle shared her troubled thoughts with Michael, who was intrigued. They hatched a sinister plan to kill Nathan, with Michael invited Corey, a friend with a history of theft and fraud, for a $20,000 reward. Corey's girlfriend Jessica and her friend Shannon joined in, with Shannon promised a 5% profit. The original plan was to kill Nathan in a parking lot. Jessica bought supplies, including gloves and cologne. Shannon provided an alibi for Michael. However, Michelle's early return home on December 1, 2010, changed the plan. She usually arrived home around 10:40 p.m., but came home early and spent the evening with Nathan, unaware of the tragic events that would soon unfold. Nathan was running late for work, so he rushed downstairs just as Michelle was communicating with Michael. To avoid arousing suspicion, Michelle used coded messages. Unbeknownst to Nathan, Michael was parked in a black Cadillac SRX in front of the house, wearing latex gloves to prevent leaving any evidence. Michael realized that Nathan's military training made him a formidable opponent, so he decided to take him by surprise. Approaching Nathan from behind, Michael shot him 5 times in the back. He quickly escaped in his car and drove away. After the crime, Michael and Shannon went to a hotel to create an alibi. Meanwhile, Jessica thoroughly cleaned their apartment to remove any incriminating evidence. The perpetrators then disposed of their clothes by burning them in a fireplace. Later, police officers arrived at the scene and were shocked by what they found. In a neighborhood considered one of the safest, Detective Todd Williams began investigating the crime scene. He found the garage door unlocked, with a strong smell of iron inside. Blood was splattered on the walls, car, and floor. Nathan's uniform, keys, and wallet were still intact, with no valuables missing. Given the lack of missing valuables, the police ruled out robbery as a motive for the murder. Detective Laurie Anderson spoke with Michelle, the victim's wife, after examining the scene. Michelle mentioned the family's financial struggles, sparking ideas for the police. They wondered if Nathan was hiding something, such as a gambling addiction or affair, which could have motivated the attack. The evidence suggested Nathan was deliberately targeted. The police examined the victim's cell phone and found only pictures of his wife and children, which led them to believe that Pete was a decent man. The investigation continued, and the next step was to canvass the neighborhood. As some neighbors reported seeing a car parked near the pet house, driven by a man wearing a brown sweatshirt, which quickly drove away after shots were fired. This gave detectives their first lead. Nathan's family was shocked to learn of his death and immediately flew to Guam to get answers. His mother, Carmelita Pett, was devastated and cried the whole way. When they arrived at the victim's home, Michelle, Nathan's wife, threw herself into her mother-in-law's arms and then lost consciousness. However, Nathan's mother sensed that her daughter-in-law's reaction seemed unnatural and possibly fake. The investigators decided to question Michelle again and asked her about the car witnesses had seen. Unexpectedly, she mentioned that her colleague, Michael Rodriguez, had a similar car. It's unclear why Michelle revealed this information, but it helped the police piece together the puzzle. It was later determined that Michelle had inadvertently revealed the truth, or perhaps the perpetrator's plan was flawed from the start. Detectives investigated Michael's identity and discovered he had a criminal record, which raised suspicions. They brought him in for questioning, and he responded calmly. According to Michael, on the day of Nathan's murder, he went shopping at a supermarket around 9 p.m. and met a woman named Shannon. They had a long conversation and decided to continue their acquaintance in a hotel room. Michael claimed they arrived at the hotel around 11 p.m. To verify Michael's alibi, the officers contacted Shannon, who confirmed their romantic encounter. However, the detective had doubts, so they decided to examine Michelle's phone records. Specialists recovered the correspondence between Michelle and Michael, which showed they had been communicating for a year. Their conversation on the day of Nathan's murder seemed suspicious, as they discussed a contract with someone named Van DJK in a cryptic manner, suggesting they might have been planning the crime. Michael was released for lack of evidence, but detectives re-questioned Michelle after analyzing her phone. She became agitated and hid something. As investigators pushed for more information, Michelle confessed to planning Nathan's murder with Michael, her lover, for insurance payouts. However, messages revealed her guilt, including a smile emoticon after Nathan's death. Meanwhile, Shannon told police that Michael's account of the attack was truthful. She admitted that she originally cooperated with him, but later surrendered to the police when she felt exploited and feared for her own safety. Hotel security footage supports her claim, revealing that Michael and Shannon arrived at the hotel at 11:40 p.m., which disputes Michael's initial statement that they arrived at 11 p.m. Detectives discovered Corey's involvement in the case after a key witness came forward. Although Corey had consistently denied any involvement, Jessica eventually revealed her role in the sinister plan. Michael Rodriguez, Corey Hawkins, Jessica Austin, and Michelle were arrested on December 8, 2010, and held without bail. Due to concerns about her mental health, Michelle was placed under surveillance to prevent a potential suicide attempt. In Clark County District Court on January 4, 2011, the 4 defendants were formally charged with conspiracy to commit murder and robbery with a firearm, as well as murder with a firearm. Michael and Corey faced additional charges of firearm possession. On September 21, 2015, Michael Rudolph Rodriguez was the first to go on trial for the murder of Nathan. To avoid the death penalty, he pleaded guilty. 1 week later, on September 29, 2015, Michael was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. His appeal was later denied. At the time of sentencing, Michael showed no emotion and did not express any regret for his crime. Michelle Pete went on trial in Las Vegas a month later, claiming a change of heart about killing her husband. She tearfully apologized to the victim's parents in court, saying she loved her husband and children and made a terrible mistake, before she fainting. The prosecutor argued that Michelle did not attempt to thwart the conspiracy, despite her claims to the contrary. The evidence presented in court supported this assertion. It was difficult for many to understand how a mother of 4 could become involved in such a heinous crime. The judge ultimately sided with the prosecution, concluding that Michelle was more involved in the crime than she had admitted. Michelle eventually pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder and first-degree murder with a firearm, which allowed her to avoid the death penalty. The Pete family also requested that the court not impose the death penalty on Michelle. Corey Alexis Hawkins also accepted a plea bargain to avoid the death penalty. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jessica Austin also took a plea deal with prosecutors and was charged with conspiracy to commit murder. At her final sentencing in March 2016, Michelle again cited her unstable emotional state as a factor in her decision to commit the crime. The Pete family children will likely suffer lifelong trauma, making it hard to form strong bonds. The pain will haunt them, but justice has been served with the 4 responsible individuals facing consequences. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Courtney Holden. The Holden family, a typical American household in Spokane. Judy and John Holden, who had 2 grown daughters living independently, also had an adopted son, Joshua, who still lived with them. Joshua, a quiet and introverted young man, had not yet started his own family and remained at home. The Holden's family approach to childcare was unconventional. The family saw fostering as a way to earn a steady income through government benefits. Judy's background and experience as a mother earned the authorities as trust. 4-year-old Courtney Holden, born on February 28, 1992, had been living in a shelter for 2 years when her life took a dramatic turn. In 1996, Courtney moved to Spokane to join the Holden family, comprised of Joshua and several other foster children. The little girl's heart was filled with hope for a loving and caring family. However, her dreams were short-lived. From a young age, Courtney was forced to bear the burden of excessive household chores. She was responsible for cleaning the entire house and washing dishes for every meal. If she made even the slightest mistake, she faced punishment. Life in the Holden home quickly became a nightmare, surpassing the hardships she experienced in the house. What was surprising was that the Holdens treated the other foster children with kindness, but they showed inexplicable hatred towards Courtney. Judy Holden was already an adult when Courtney joined the family, and Courtney was the last child they took from the orphanage. This might be the reason for their unusual behavior towards her. Courtney was subjected to strict rules, including being forbidden from going outside without permission. Visitors to the Holden home often witnessed Judy and Joshua mistreating Courtney, calling her Cinderella in a derogatory manner. Courtney found herself in a difficult situation, but she was a resilient girl who adapted to the harsh conditions over time. She learned to fear her foster mother and was terrified of her brother Joshua, who prohibited her from socializing with friends and peers. She was not allowed to have a mobile phone or other modern conveniences, and she only left the house when necessary and with permission. The only time she enjoyed some freedom were when the house was empty and she could step out into the backyard or chat with neighbors. As she grew into an adult, Courtney became accustomed to her life and learned to treat her foster parents with respect, despite their mistreatment. She did not become bitter, as she had no concept of a normal family life to compare hers to. Courtney's life improved significantly when her brother Joshua moved out of the house due to disagreements with their parents. This newfound freedom allowed her to come and go as she pleased, spend time with friends, and enjoy activities she had previously been restricted from. As a result, Courtney finally felt happy. As time passed, Courtney graduated from school and met a man named Michael, with whom she fell deeply in love. Michael treated her with kindness and care, a stark contrast to her previous experiences. Their relationship flourished, and they welcomed a son together in 2011. However, things took a surprising turn when Michael asked Courtney to move in with him and start a life together as a family. Despite his requests, Courtney chose to remain in her parents' house and ended her romantic relationship with Michael. By this time, the Holden house had become empty, as the foster children had grown up and moved out. Courtney's foster father, John Holden, had passed away, leaving her to live with her foster mother, Judy, and her child. Michael was allowed to visit his son, but only with Judy's permission. During Joshua's absence, Courtney's life with her son was relatively peaceful. However, after their father's death in 2014, Joshua returned and began to harass the family. He installed numerous surveillance cameras around the house, posting signs that read, "Smile, you're on camera." The cameras made Courtney anxious, as she knew that leaving the house would likely result in trouble from Joshua. Courtney's life took a turn for the worse around 2015. She confided in a neighbor that Joshua had taken away her freedom, forbidding her from having a phone, using social media, talking to outsiders, driving, or leaving the house without his permission. He also forced her to cut ties with Michael after the child's birth. Despite this, Courtney remained silent and compliant. Neighbors noticed bruises on Courtney's face and arms and asked her about them. She openly admitted that Joshua was physically abusing her. The neighbors were concerned and tried to help her, even contacting the police. However, the Holdens were able to dismiss the cases because Courtney never publicly acknowledged the abuse. As time went on, Courtney was no longer allowed to talk to her neighbors, who only saw her outside in the evenings. She obeyed Joshua's rules without question. Those who knew Joshua described him as a large and intimidating man with a cruel and unpredictable nature. He was also known to be paranoid and prone to insults. Joshua had a history of violent behavior and had even boasted about being able to kill someone and dispose of their body with ease. In 2005, he was charged with assault and harassment, but the case was dropped due to lack of evidence and the victim's refusal to cooperate with the police. There were also suspicions that he had committed assault and misconduct against a woman in 2003, but he was never identified as the perpetrator. In 2006, Joshua was arrested for domestic violence against his mother and for burglary, leading to him leaving home for several years. The last message Courtney sent to a friend on Facebook, nearly 2 years ago, was a desperate cry for help. "I have to go. I must leave. Josh is coming." After that, her account went silent. Family acquaintances described the dynamics within the Holden household as strange and controlling. They were particularly puzzled by the fact that Courtney's child referred to Joshua's mother, Judy, as Mom and Joshua as Dad, while Courtney was referred to only by her first name. In August 2018, a heated argument escalated, prompting Courtney to try to leave, but Joshua, larger and stronger, physically restrained her and carried her back inside. It's the last time she was seen outside the household. It wasn't until nearly 2 years later, in October 2019, that concerns about Courtney's disappearance began to grow. Michael and his girlfriend, who had not seen Courtney in almost 2 years, started to worry about her whereabouts. He was eager to see his child, filed a missing person report with the police on October 24th, sparking an investigation into Courtney's disappearance. The Holdens claimed that Courtney had abandoned her child and fled. However, they could not explain who was continuing to access her Social Security benefits and electronic food stamps. On the same day as the search, Joshua and Judy withdrew the remaining $600 from Courtney's bank account. The next day, a woman claiming to be Courtney called the National Center for Criminal Information, stating that she was safe and did not want to be searched for. However, the police discovered that she was actually one of Courtney's stepsisters. As the investigation continued, Joshua and Judy provided multiple conflicting accounts of Courtney's disappearance. They claimed that she had run away with a truck driver, and later, that she had left with a secret lover. The inconsistencies in their stories, combined with Courtney's unexplained absence, raised suspicions that the Holdens were hiding something. In October 2019, Joshua and Judy Holden suddenly left Spokane, further arousing the suspicions of detectives investigating the disappearance of Courtney. The Holdens' family flight from the area strengthened the detectives' conviction that they were involved in Courtney's disappearance. The investigation into Courtney's disappearance continued, and the Spokane Police Department attempted a welfare check in early October, which quickly escalated into a missing person case. The case was assigned to Major Crimes Detective Randy Lesser, who has spoken publicly about the investigation. The information gathered from police interviews and court records has shed light on the events surrounding Courtney's disappearance. When Lesser visited the house in early October, Judy told him that Courtney had been home just a few days prior. She claimed that Courtney had left on foot with her son. However, when Lesser asked for Judy's phone number, she became hostile and locked the door in his face. Later, Judy allowed police to enter the house to see Courtney's room, but she became very nervous. The house was extremely cluttered, with piles of items covering all available space on counters. Courtney's room was also cluttered, and the mattress was bare, giving the impression that no one had lived there recently. At one point, Judy panicked when she lost sight of one of the detectives behind a closed door and ordered the investigators to leave. When Lesser asked to search the rest of the house for Courtney's child, Judy refused. A neighbor reported seeing Joshua, Judy, and one of Courtney's sisters leaving in a van with a child. Detective Lesser found it suspicious that Courtney, who suffered from a chronic illness, had not seen a doctor since October 2017. Her last prescription was in July 2018, although she had been receiving medications monthly before disappearing. Surveillance footage showed Joshua and Judy shopping with a small child. Cameras also captured they withdrawing money from Courtney's bank account on the day she was declared missing. By October 24th, Joshua and Judy had left their home. When police arrived to execute a search warrant, they found that the DVR from the home surveillance system had been removed, and the family's 6 pets were gone. Joshua and Judy's mobile numbers were deactivated in mid-November, but 2 new numbers with Texas area codes were activated on the same day. A month after the Holdens left, a neighbor called the police to report activity at the house. It was one of Judy's daughters and her husband, who had flown in from Texas to check on the property. They claimed they hadn't seen Courtney in 2 years and that Judy had retired. In mid-December, Joshua and Judy traveled to Texas, where they were eventually found by the police at Judy's daughter's house. Courtney's son was also present at the scene. Joshua and Judy Holden were arrested and charged with identity theft, interfering with child custody, and using Courtney's bank accounts without her permission. Fortunately, the child was found safe and was reunited with his father. No other family members were charged with any crimes. The police searched Judy's home in Spokane with search dogs but did not find any signs of Courtney. They also searched a home in Texas and a vehicle in Oklahoma, but these searches did not yield any clues about Courtney's whereabouts. Joshua, 40, and Judy, 74, were held in a Texas jail, where they refused to speak with police and fought extradition to Spokane. The authorities awaited a governor's warrant to bring them back, but since there was insufficient evidence to link them to Courtney's disappearance, they were likely released. This case remains one of the most puzzling missing person cases, with little progress made during the month-long investigation. The police have extensive notes on the case, but Judy and Joshua maintain their innocence in Courtney's disappearance. The police, however, suspect that Courtney is likely deceased, but they lack concrete evidence to prove it. It's tragic that Courtney was drawn into the Holden family, who failed to provide her with the love and support she desperately sought. Despite their mistreatment, Courtney wanted to believe they were her family and struggled to defend herself against their cruelty. The cruel reality is that there are many ways to secretly dispose of a body using chemicals that can evade detection by experts and police dogs, leaving Courtney's fate a heartbreaking mystery. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Rachel Anderson. Rachel Anderson was born on January 28, 1994, in Warren, Ohio, to parents William, Bill, Rachel, and Patricia, Trish, Rachel. She grew up with a younger brother, John, with whom she shared a close family bond. Rachel graduated from Warren Harding High School in 2012, where she excelled academically as a member of the National Honor Society. She was also an active athlete, participating in soccer and volleyball. Despite the unconventional nature of her career aspirations, Rachel had always dreamed of becoming a funeral director since childhood. This passion led her to pursue a degree in mortuary science at Youngstown State University. Her hard work and dedication earned her recognition as one of the top students in her field and secured a scholarship. Following her undergraduate studies, Rachel enrolled in the Cincinnati College of Mortuary Science, graduating in 2016 with a Bachelor of Science in Mortuary Science. She became a member of the Ohio Funeral Directors Association and moved to Columbus, where she completed an internship at Shaw Davis Funeral Home. Rachel approached her work with great respect and saw it as her duty to support and care for families during difficult times. Rachel's internship was nearing its end, and she had high hopes of becoming a permanent employee at the Bureau. On January 26, Rachel Anderson celebrated her 24th birthday. The next day, her brother John visited her from Warren. Before he left to return home on January 28, Rachel gave him the key to her apartment. However, John accidentally took the key with him when he left. Later that day, Rachel realized she had misplaced her key and contacted John Kennedy, who had a spare, to arrange a pickup. After speaking with her mother around 6:30 p.m., Rachel retrieved her key from Kennedy. Since her apartment door could only be locked from the outside with a key, she had to leave it unlocked. Rachel stopped for dinner at her favorite restaurant and arrived home around 7:30 p.m. As she entered her apartment, she was confronted by a man who was waiting for her. He abducted her, taking her to the top floor of the building, where he restrained her using various objects. The man bound Rachel's feet and ankles with a hair dryer cord, tied her hands with a belt and blinds cords, and used a curling iron cord to restrain her wrists. He also gagged her to silence her. A man then forced Rachel to reveal her PIN numbers and subjected her to torture, abuse, and physical harm. Ultimately, he strangled her with a cord from an electric blanket, causing blunt force trauma and the stab wound to her head. After the attack, the man hid Rachel's body in a closet, leaving her partially naked with the electric blanket cord still tied around her neck. He then stole her car and used her bank cards to make purchases at several stores in Columbus. Forensic evidence revealed that bruising and red marks on Rachel's ankles and wrists suggested she was alive when the perpetrator restrained her. A DNA sample was discovered on the rope used to tie her up and on Rachel's body. The coroner's autopsy report concluded that Rachel's death was caused by a stab wound to the head and neck, contradicting the initial theory of strangulation. After interviewing Rachel's co-workers and her ex-boyfriend, who had an alibi, detectives explored alternative explanations for the attack. They returned to Rachel's apartment to search for clues, hoping to identify the perpetrator. During this search, they found Rachel's purse, which was missing her wallet, on the living room floor. 2 weeks later, Rachel's mother discovered the 9-inch steak knife used in the stabbing in a box in the apartment. Detectives initially thought the crime was a robbery, but the brutality and torture inflicted on Rachel suggested that the perpetrator was not just a thief, but a skilled and sadistic individual who took pleasure in exerting power over his victim. The investigators considered various motives but had no suspects and kept the investigation details secret to avoid compromising the case. Later, DNA samples were found on Rachel's body and at the crime scene, but unfortunately, they did not match anyone in the Special Services database. Fortunately, a surveillance video showed 2 people using Rachel's car to drive around the city after her death, and cash was withdrawn from her debit and credit cards. An investigation revealed a crucial lead when a phone number linked to the night of January 28, 2018, at Rachel's apartment was identified. Location data analysis led authorities to the suspect. Anthony Perrin, a 54-year-old convicted offender, was arrested. He had spent 33 years in prison for violent crimes, including rape, robbery, kidnapping, and attempted murder. Anthony Perrin had a turbulent past, beginning with his upbringing by grandparents, then living with his mother. Mental health diagnoses, including conduct disorder and antisocial personality disorder, indicated serious social problems. He entered a youth commission facility at age 14, then transitioned into foster care. At 15, Anthony faced his first charge in 1980 for abusing a young foster brother he babysat. A year later, he threatened his girlfriend's mother with a knife and attempted to drown her before fleeing. In 1982, Anthony Perrin was convicted of crimes in Franklin at 17 and served 24 years. After release in 2006, he moved to Georgia, was charged with forgery in 2007, and spent 9 more years in prison. Released in 2017, he returned to Ohio, required to check in with the sheriff's department every 90 days. On August 21, 2017, Anthony was caught with a woman in his car. 6 days later, he was stopped for driving without a license and found with a knife and shotgun, but wasn't arrested. Later, CCTV footage showed Rachel's car outside a store, with a man getting out of the passenger side. The driver wasn't visible, but police identified the man as Anthony Slits. He was questioned and revealed he was approached by a man who offered him money to cash in his ex-girlfriend's cards. Slits confirmed Anthony's identity and outlined their route on January 28, 2018, when they tried to cash out Rachel's stolen cards. Anthony Perrin remained at large until his capture on February 9, 2018, when he was taken into custody following a multi-day stakeout of his sister's home. Anthony was charged with multiple counts of serious crimes, including burglary, robbery, kidnapping, rape, and murder. Nearly 2 years later, his trial began on February 4, 2020, and 4 witnesses testified on the first day, including Rachel's co-worker Jonathan Kennedy, who was the person who found Rachel. The trial continued with testimony from Jonathan and the manager of the apartment complex where the crime occurred. Officer Frank Ghani, who was parked outside the apartment when the body was discovered, also testified and shared the surveillance footage with the jury. On the same day, Anthony expressed dissatisfaction with his attorneys to the judge and requested new representation. However, it became apparent that Anthony was intentionally delaying the proceedings. The prosecution presented expert witnesses on February 10, including a latent print expert, who explained how technology was used to track the use of Rachel Anderson's debit card and its connection to the crime scene. The defendant's sister also testified, revealing that her brother had given her the debit card, claiming it belonged to his girlfriend. However, after watching news reports, she discovered that the card actually belonged to Rachel. The final day of testimony was February 11th. The medical examiner testified that the defendant's DNA was found at the crime scene. Additionally, a forensic pathologist and a deputy coroner from the Franklin County office provided details about the extent of Rachel Anderson's injuries. During the final hearing on February 12, Assistant Prosecutor Amy Van Kullen presented the state's closing argument, outlining the events of the crime and asserting that Anthony had murdered Rachel Anderson in cold blood. In contrast, defense attorney Larry Thomas acknowledged that Anthony had used Rachel's cards, but argued that he was not responsible for the crime. The defense attorney argued that the prosecution's case lacked concrete evidence, as the DNA and cell phone data did not definitively link Anthony Perrin to the crime. However, after deliberating for approximately 6 hours over 2 days, the jury of 4 men and 8 women found him guilty on all counts. The prosecution pursued the death penalty due to the severity of the crime, which involved the murder of Rachel Anderson during an aggravated burglary. Additionally, Anthony's prior conviction for a similar attempted murder of a woman weighed against him. Prosecutor Bryan stated that some individuals consistently disregard the law, and Anthony Perrin is a prime example. The sentencing phase of the trial began on February 18th. In an attempt to mitigate the sentence, the defense presented evidence of Anthony's troubled childhood, but the prosecution counter-argued that the aggravating circumstances of the case outweighed any mitigating factors. During the trial, it was established that Anthony Perrin was fully aware of his actions when he attacked Rachel. Despite this, several people testified on his behalf, including his mother, sister, a psychologist, and a former teacher. Anthony also addressed the jury, sharing a 13-minute unscripted statement about his troubled past, including an abusive childhood and difficulties after being released from prison. In his statement, Anthony described feeling helpless and claimed that the system had failed him. He blamed the justice system for his current situation but did not directly address the crime or apologize for it. After deliberating for 3.5 hours, the jury was unable to agree on the death penalty and instead recommended life in prison without parole. The sentencing took place on March 16, 2020. Rachel's mother was visibly emotional in court as the verdict was announced. Rachel's father also spoke, expressing his surprise at how Anthony, a repeat offender with a history of violence, was able to make demands and become hysterical during the investigation. The case of Rachel Anderson's murder drew to a close as Anthony Perrin's sentence was handed down. However, what stood out was not the severity of the sentence, but rather the disturbing behavior of one individual, Anthony Perrin himself. As an adult, he shifted the blame away from himself and onto the system, denying any personal responsibility for his heinous actions. Despite his efforts to deflect blame, Anthony received 2 consecutive life sentences without parole, one for aggravated murder and another for violent crimes. In addition, he was given 63 more years for other crimes including burglary, kidnapping, robbery, and various violent offenses. This marked a total sentence of multiple consecutive life terms plus 63 years. Hello friends. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Michael Redlich. Danielle was born in 1976 in Florida. Her family later moved to Cleveland, Ohio. She grew up kind and well-mannered with a creative nature. Danielle was the eldest child and appreciated beauty from a young age. She attended Valencia College and later enrolled in the psychology department at Baldwin Wallace University in 1996. Her mother, Caitlin Aquino, remarried with Michael but passed away from cancer after a short 2-year marriage. Caitlin, battling breast cancer, received high-quality care due to her Michael's insurance. They formally married for medical benefits, but the treatment was unsuccessful. After her death, her husband, Michael Redlich, raised their children alone. At 22, Danielle, the eldest daughter, returned home to help, bringing her brother and sister with her to live with Michael. Danielle later made the unexpected decision to marry her stepfather, Michael. Started as a friend in 2019. Danielle cared for the younger kids and worked at a bar at night, while Michael built his sports recruitment career. He became attached to the children and felt comfortable with Danielle, who saw him as a dependable support despite their 20-year age difference. Their easy and natural interaction gradually brought them closer together. Danielle initially kept her relationship with Michael hidden from her family. With Michael, she felt loved and protected. He found her a job at an advertising agency, had a high income, and devoted time to the family. Things were going well for both. When Michael received the job offer to become the Memphis Grizzlies vice president, he asked Danielle to move with him, but she hesitated. Danielle declined to join Michael due to her studies and familiar lifestyle, but they continued their long-distance relationship. One day, Michael showed her a cottage he bought for them by the Mississippi River, impressing her with its picturesque location. She eventually moved in, and Michael found her a job in radio. Initially, everything was perfect, but Michael's job later brought changes. Michael's new position brought increased stress and tension with management. He became stressed and tired, often unwinding with alcohol, which became a daily habit. He'd return home late, intoxicated, and angry. Danielle tried to support him, but his promises to stop were short-lived. After missing a planned dinner, tension between them grew. Danielle was upset, saying if he couldn't make time for her, he should have warned her. Danielle made a joke, which struck a nerve with Michael, and he slapped her across the face, causing her to stagger back. Her clothes and the floor were bloodied. In shock, she recoiled as Michael cried and apologized. He took her to a sports doctor, who provided first aid and recommended seeing a dentist and plastic surgeon due to the severity of her injuries, including a chipped front tooth. The next day, Michael made amends with a thoughtful dinner, showering his wife with attention and care. Despite the previous day's incident, she forgave him and chose not to report it, aware of the strict domestic violence laws in their state. This wasn't the first warning sign, however. Danielle had already experienced similar behavior from Michael before the incident. In 2003, Michael and Danielle had a daughter named Jaden. A year later, they decided to formalize their relationship. Life was going well for them, but Michael still faced obstacles at work due to a change in management, which prevented him from getting a long-awaited promotion. 7 years later, their son Sawyer was born, and both of two devoted themselves to raising their children. However, Michael's work struggles and added responsibilities took a toll on him, triggering a return to drinking and more frequent conflicts with Danielle. Michael's behavior finally reached a boiling point during an argument in which he physically attacked Danielle, grabbing her by the throat and holding her against the wall. The incident was incredibly frightening for Danielle. She realized she could no longer tolerate Michael's rough behavior and made the difficult decision to leave him, taking the children with her. Danielle moved in with her relatives, who had initially been skeptical of her marriage to Michael but had grown to accept it over time. In an attempt to win her back, Michael visited Danielle multiple times, apologized for his actions, and asked her to return home. After a period of separation, they eventually reconciled and restored their relationship. The years following were marked by uncertainty. The Redlick family relocated to California for 5 years, but struggled with Michael's drinking habit. After losing their jobs, they relied on savings until moving to Indiana in 2014, seeking a fresh start and stability. Michael moved first, while Danielle stayed behind in California with the children. They needed time to sell their old home and belongings, a process that took a year. The constant relocating had taken a toll on the family, especially the children, who struggled to adapt to their new surroundings. Meanwhile, the family's financial situation improved, but the distance between Danielle and Michael began to affect their marriage. They grew apart, communicating less and less, as the infrequent visits took a strain on their relationship. Danielle and Michael faced new challenges after reuniting. Danielle noticed Michael's emotional distance and dwindling romantic connection. In reality, Michael was struggling with personal issues related to age and health, affecting his intimate life. He confessed his struggles to Danielle, fearing rejection, but she responded with empathy and reassured him of her support. After trying various medications, they decided to try hormone injections. With the testosterone injections, Michael experienced a resurgence in his physical and mental health. He regained the energy and vitality of his younger years. However, this newfound energy also led to increased aggression. One evening, while Danielle was brushing her teeth, Michael attacked her in the bathroom. His reasoning for this violent outburst was that she had failed to wake him up when she went to rest the previous evening. Danielle was fed up with the situation and decided to leave. However, this only infuriated her husband, who then choked her. Danielle was unable to defend herself and started to lose consciousness. She felt like she was on the verge of death. When she eventually came to, she saw her husband standing over her, looking scared and confused, and begging for forgiveness. All Danielle could manage to do was to silently crawl away from him. Following this incident, they continued to live together in the same house and raise their children, but their relationship was irreparably altered. Apparently, the situation at home had reached a breaking point. Michael's drinking problem worsened, leading to more frequent arguments over small issues. These disputes often turned violent, causing stress and fear for the family. Despite her unhappiness and resentment, she remained in the relationship, still deeply loving her husband. Their daughter Danielle also suffered, becoming anxious and withdrawn. She took up photography as a hobby to distract herself from her troubles. Despite their issues, the Redlich family appeared to be a respectable family to outsiders, as they generally kept their disagreements private. By the end of 2014, the family had finally settled in Florida. Around this time, Michael decided to change careers, seeking a less stressful profession. He started working as the Director of External Affairs and Partnership Programs at the University of Central Florida and also began teaching. Although Michael's post-MBA career income was lower, the job provided him with a sense of fulfillment and stability. The family initially rented a home in Winter Park but eventually purchased a large, Mediterranean-style house in the area. The house had a unique feature, an attic floor that Danielle claimed as her own private retreat, often retreating there on nights when Michael's anger issues flared up. As Michael received testosterone injections, their intimate life briefly improved, but even in these moments, he could be emotionally harsh. Their relationship remained strained, and Danielle turned to alcohol to cope. With Michael working and providing for the family, Danielle managed the household and children, but her dependency worsened, and she became increasingly withdrawn. The frequent arguments eventually led to their separation in 2016. Despite Michael's controlling behavior, Danielle continued to allow him to see the children and provide financial support. As Danielle began working at a school, she started to regain her independence with the help of new friends. They helped her overcome her depression, but she still maintained a relationship with Michael, giving him unrestricted access to her life. This arrangement ultimately led to another violent argument, resulting in Danielle's hospitalization with a concussion. Fearing repercussions for Michael, she kept quiet about the incident. However, on this occasion, Michael took Danielle's silence as a sign that she would continue to tolerate his behavior. When questioned, Danielle revealed a shocking incident that had occurred in early October 2016. Michael had attempted to run her over with his car, but she narrowly escaped by jumping into the bushes. This incident prompted Danielle to visit the police department, but when detectives started asking detailed questions, she became hesitant and left without filing a report. The reason for their initial separation was the same as before, but they eventually reconciled and returned to their shared home. However, this decision ultimately proved disastrous for both of them. On January 12, 2019, at approximately 9 a.m., a 911 call was placed. During the call, a woman identifying herself as Danielle Redlich reported that her husband, Michael, had suffered a fatal heart attack. When the rescue service arrived, they noticed a strong smell of cleaning agent and a bucket of pink-colored water at the entrance to the living room. Michael lay on the floor in a pool of blood, lifeless, with a penetrating knife wound. Michelle, who made the call, had cuts on her wrists and was taken to the hospital after receiving first aid. The police investigation revealed that Michael Redlich's life had been taken, and forensic analysis confirmed the blood traces belonged to the deceased. The pink liquid was diluted blood, and someone had tried to erase a trail from the bedroom to the living room. Despite cleaning efforts, blood spatter was found on walls and corners, and a large knife was discovered at the kitchen entrance, with 3 smaller knives in the sink. Detectives questioned Danielle after her injuries were deemed non-life-threatening. She changed her story multiple times, initially claiming her husband died of heart disease, then saying he took his own life after an argument. Experts disputed this, citing the difficulty of self-inflicting such a wound and the usual preference for simpler methods. The autopsy revealed Michael died from blood loss, which could have been prevented with timely medical help. He also had a lacerated eye and high levels of alcohol in his system. An investigation found that Michael and Danielle had an argument days before the incident, witnessed by their daughter Jaden. Michael had been drinking and burst into the bathroom where Danielle was hiding, but Jaden intervened and took the bottle away. Danielle left the house and returned after Michael fell asleep. Jaden said it was the first time she'd seen her father so angry, but he apologized multiple times and was normally a loving father. The next day, they reconciled and attended a soccer game, but Danielle appeared upset and barely spoke. That evening, Danielle and her husband dropped off their kids at a friend's house for a sleepover, leaving them alone for the night. Later, Danielle stopped by McDonald's to pick up dinner and returned home around 10:30 p.m. When she arrived, she found her husband intoxicated. During dinner, Danielle received a text message from an unknown number. Her husband saw the message, became enraged, and physically attacked her, attempting to strangle her. In an effort to defend herself, Danielle grabbed a nearby knife and stabbed her husband in the chest. He fell to the ground, bleeding heavily. Danielle claimed that she immediately called for emergency assistance, but accidentally dialed the wrong number. An investigation later confirmed her account of events. Danielle explained that she lied to the 911 operator and during interrogation because she was afraid of not being believed that she had acted in self-defense. This fear was partly due to prior incidents that had damaged her credibility with authorities. She had recently been involved in a physical altercation with friends and had also resisted arrest when police arrived at the scene of the incident, even attempting to bite an officer. Her uncooperative behavior during the investigation led to charges of disorderly conduct and resisting arrest. As a result, she worried that her claims of self-defense would be met with skepticism. Danielle was on probation for about a year. The cuts on her wrists were self-inflicted but superficial, leading investigators to doubt her claim of trying to end her life due to emotional turmoil. They also found she wasn't a role model, because she having signed up on a dating site and being unfaithful after learning of Michael's infidelity. Analysis of messages between Michael and Danielle showed she still loved him, but felt betrayed and disillusioned after learning of his affairs and plans to leave her. She was heartbroken, feeling he didn't appreciate her dedication. The prosecution used this against her. The prosecutor claimed the crime was premeditated in a fit of rage due to Michael's infidelity and impending divorce. Neighbors confirmed their loud arguments often turned physical. While Michael was described as kind and helpful, Danielle was seen as quarrelsome. Video evidence showed her acting irrationally and attacking others. Danielle's lawyer claimed her actions were self-defense due to a history of emotional and physical abuse by Michael. Relatives confirmed he was rough and emotionally abusive, frequently humiliating her, although never in their presence. They also noted Danielle became nervous and quick-tempered after years of marriage, but a relative recalled calling her crazy. The prosecution claims Danielle deliberately left her husband to die, indicating she was waiting for him to pass away. They found she used a dating app on the night of the incident, suggesting premeditation driven by hatred and financial gain. Danielle stood to lose a portion of their shared wealth after the divorce. Her net worth was $1.2 million at the time of Michael's death. She had repeatedly changed her statements, possibly to confuse the investigation and tamper with evidence. The defense claimed Michael was a manipulator who preyed on his stepdaughter after his first wife's death. Despite a plea deal offering a 10-year sentence for manslaughter, the defendant insisted on her innocence, risking a life sentence for first or second-degree murder. The jury delivered a verdict on July 17, 2022, finding Danielle Redlich not guilty of premeditated murder, but guilty of tampering with evidence. She received a 5-year suspended sentence, which was reduced to 2 years due to time served. Hello friends. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Lizzie Marriott. In the fall of 2012, Lizzie Marriott began her studies in marine biology at the University of New Hampshire. To reduce her living expenses, she moved out of her family home in Massachusetts, where she lived with her parents, Bob and Melissa Lizzie, and relocated to Chester to live with her aunt and uncle, Tony and Becky Hannah. Lizzie quickly became a beloved member of her aunt and uncle's family. She had a passion for marine animals, which led her to pursue a degree in marine biology. Although she was now 2 hours away from her parents, they remained close and kept in regular contact. Lizzie was known for her kind, gentle, and sweet nature, which made her a favorite among those who knew her. Lizzie's aunt recalled that whenever Lizzie came home, she'd exclaim, "I'm home," and it filled their hearts with joy. Lizzie was thriving in her new life, with new opportunities opening up in her free time. She had found a job at Target, where she quickly fit in and earned respect from her colleagues. That's where she met Kate McDonough, an 18-year-old who quickly became a close friend. They girls often hung out after work, and one day, Kate invited Lizzie over to her apartment. On subsequent invitations, Lizzie was happy to accept. Lizzie and Kate planned a cozy evening with dinner and a movie on October 9th. However, Kate's boyfriend Seth joined them, bringing a lively atmosphere. Seth was a man of many talents, with a theater arts background and a black belt in karate. Lizzie's family and friends expected a fun evening together. When she failed to return home at the agreed-upon time, her relatives initially thought she might have stayed overnight at a friend's place and then headed to university. However, when she didn't show up the next day, her aunt and uncle grew concerned and contacted her parents, who were also unaware of her whereabouts. Lizzie's parents immediately drove to Chester, reporting their daughter's disappearance to the police along the way. The investigation began, and the police questioned everyone who knew Lizzie, but her relatives had no idea where she had gone. Fortunately, a friend named Nate revealed that he thought Lizzie might be with Kate McDonough. Nate asked Kate if she had seen Lizzie. Kate replied that she hadn't. Detectives began investigating the new information provided by Nate. In the meantime, they discovered that her bank accounts showed no activity, and her phone was dead. This led them to rule out the initial theory that she might have been involved in an accident. Shortly after, her car was located. After interviewing her friends and co-workers, investigators gathered some information about Kate and her boyfriend, Seth. Lizzie and Kate's acquaintances have noticed they spending increasing amounts of time together, despite their vastly different personalities. Outwardly, Lizzie is sociable and compassionate, whereas Kate is known for being rude. The reason behind their close relationship remains unclear. Lizzie was once a cheerful person, but after meeting Seth, she changed. Her co-workers noticed a difference, and she distanced herself from relatives who disapproved of Seth's behavior. They started dating when Lizzie was 17 and moved in together in Dover, New Hampshire, after she turned 18. On October 12th, authorities questioned Kate and Seth separately but at the same time. This tactic helped investigators gather more information. For 2 hours, Kate consistently denied ever having met Lizzie on October 9th, but then she stopped cooperating completely with the investigation. Seth, on the other hand, was more open with the details. He contradicted Kate's account, saying that Lizzie was actually at their place on the 9th. Seth described the events of that day saying that he, Kate and Lizzie watched a movie together, played strip poker and then engaged in a consensual threesome. However, the situation becomes tragic when things don't go as planned. Lizzie accidentally dies while tied with rope. Too shocked and afraid of being misunderstood, Seth and Kate decided to dump Lizzie's body into the Piscataqua River on Pierce Island. After being questioned for 11 hours, Seth accompanied police to the location and reenacted how he and Kate threw the body off the cliff. Lizzie's parents doubted Seth's account of her death, insisting she was in a loving relationship with Brittany and wouldn't cheat or take her own life. They urged police to find her body for a proper burial. The search continued with volunteers and a detective, but strong river currents made it possible her body was swept to the Atlantic. The investigation into Lizzie's death continued with a search of Seth's apartment. Detectives found the apartment cluttered and disorganized, with evidence of Seth's interest in occultism and black magic. A search of the surrounding area turned up a bag in a trash container containing black leather gloves, a sweatshirt, and men's underwear with DNA from both Seth and Lizzie, confirming their intimate relationship. The sweatshirt was identified as Lizzie's by her family. Later, Kate McDonough confirmed some of his account. According to Kate, she, Seth, and Lizzie spent the evening of October 9th watching a movie and playing strip poker, which eventually led to a consensual intimate encounter involving rope bondage, which Lizzie had agreed to. Lizzie Marriott was having a good time until she suddenly had a seizure, suffocated, and lost consciousness. She stopped breathing when Seth and Kate lifted her up. Kate thought it was an accident, but an unexpected witness's testimony took the investigation in a new direction. A young woman visited the police station, claiming to have crucial information about the Lizzie Marriott case and requesting to speak with the lead detectives. During the conversation, she introduced herself as Catherine Fish, Seth Mella's ex-girlfriend. Her statements implied that Seth was capable of murder. She revealed that Seth had once confided in her about a fantasy in which he took someone's life. To understand Catherine's testimony, it's essential to examine her past relationship with Seth. They met 10 years ago, and initially, Seth seemed attentive and caring. However, during their first intimate encounter, Catherine discovered Seth's interest in BDSM. Seth initially seemed great, but he revealed a cruel and controlling side over time. He didn't tolerate disagreement or boundaries. After sharing dark fantasies, Kinda felt trapped and scared, especially when Seth physically attacked her, grabbing her throat and refusing to let go despite her pleas. This incident shattered her illusions about their relationship. After moving to a new city, Kinda felt isolated and alone, dependent on Seth. As his behavior escalated, he introduced other women, proposing a polyamorous relationship. Kinda felt trapped, afraid to leave due to Seth's controlling behavior. It took months for her to gather the courage to escape the toxic relationship. In May 2014, Seth Mella appeared in court, facing not only intentional murder charges but also accusations of taking advantage of multiple individuals. Several people testified against him, including Kate McDonough. 2 months after Lizzie's death, Kate was arrested and held in custody on charges of obstructing justice and interfering with the investigation. During her time in custody, Kate had ample opportunity to reflect on the events and consider who she was protecting. While imprisoned, Kate and Seth stayed in close touch and envisioned a life together in a country where they could not be extradited. They shared dreams of getting married, starting a family, and building a future, but their escape plan stalled in the winter of 2012. Seth convinced his cellmate, Ryan Bachman, who was about to be released, to help their escape. The plan was for Ryan to use his bank account to withdraw money, buy drugs, and sell them to increase their initial investment. They intended to use the money to purchase guns, 2 cars, explosives, and a boat. Ryan had different intentions and chose to keep the money for himself, causing Seth to give up on their plan to escape. Meanwhile, authorities became aware of their scheme. Seth wrote to Kate and hinted at a reunion in the afterlife, suggesting he believed in its existence. This could imply that Seth was vaguely suggesting Kate should consider ending her life to join him in the afterlife. As time passed, Kate's thoughts became clearer, allowing her to make a more rational decision when the prosecutor's office presented her with a favorable deal in 2014. Under the agreement, Kate was required to reveal the truth about the events that occurred on the evening of October 9th, and in return, her potential 20-year prison sentence was significantly reduced to 3 years. This offer was especially beneficial in light of the circumstances that later came to light during the investigation. As part of their agreement, Kate acknowledged that she was deeply intimidated by Seth and followed his instructions without hesitation. Over time, Seth had slowly stripped Kate of her autonomy and stifled her ability to make decisions for herself. Approximately 6 weeks before the tragic event, Seth had asked Kate to arrange a threesome with someone else while she was away on a 10-day theater tour, but Kate was unable to find someone to participate. Over time, Seth's messages to Kate became increasingly aggressive, transitioning from giving her instructions to making threats. He warned her of severe consequences if she didn't meet his demands, which included bringing a friend to participate in his plan. Kate invited Lizzie to visit her at home, and Lizzie agreed because she trusted Kate and had been to her place before. However, Kate didn't tell Lizzie that Seth would also be there, as she knew Lizzie might be hesitant. Seth had seen Lizzie's photos and was eager to meet her. On October 9th, Seth arrived at Kate's apartment at 9 p.m. At first, Kate and Lizzie chatted together, and Seth joined in later, initially creating a light-hearted atmosphere with his jokes and friendly demeanor. As they watched a movie, Seth suggested playing strip poker, dimming the lights to create an intimate setting. Lizzie began to lose the game, eventually ending up in her underwear. In another round, Seth suggested kissing Kate, but she refused, explaining that she was in a committed relationship and found the idea unpleasant. Seth suggested leaving Lizzie alone, but she refused. He retrieved a rope and gloves from his room, returned, and strangled her with the rope before she could react. After killing Lizzie, Seth committed a further act of violence against her body. His girlfriend, Kate, was present but did not intervene, claiming she was too scared to act. She feared that she would become the next victim if she tried to help. Later, at around 1 a.m., Seth and his girlfriend wrapped Lizzie's body in tarpaulin and placed it in a suitcase. They then transported the suitcase to Lizzie's car and drove to Pierce Island by the river. From the observation deck, they removed Lizzie's body from the suitcase and threw it off the cliff. After the incident, Kate and another person cleaned up inside her car. Then they drove to the campus parking lot, where Kate parked her vehicle. From the parking lot, they walked a 10-mile distance to Kate's home. The experience left Kate severely shaken, and she went into shock. She was also fearful of testifying against Seth in the future, worrying that he might intimidate or silence her due to concerns for her safety. During the trial, Kate's excessive sobbing raised suspicions, with some doubting her emotional display and suggesting she was a skilled actress. Kate's defense claimed that Lizzie's death was an accident during intimacy, but acknowledged that Seth and Kate had disposed of the body. They alleged that Seth isolated and coerced Kate, affecting her mental state. The prosecution focused on deliberate murder, citing the discovery of gloves at the scene, which suggested premeditation. Roberta Gherkin and Paul Hickok, acquaintances of Seth Mella, testified for the prosecution. After Lizzie's murder, Seth called them at 10:49 p.m. asking for help. When they arrived after 11 p.m., they found Seth on the bed next to Kate McDonough in lingerie. Seth said, "This time things went too far." Roberta found Kate in the kitchen and suggested calling an ambulance. They chose not to intervene or contact police, avoiding involvement. Seth Mella was convicted of first-degree murder by strangulation and conspiracy in 2014, receiving a life sentence without parole. Kate McDonough, who was 20 at the time, got a 3-year sentence as part of a plea deal and was released in 2016. She has since maintained a low profile. Lizzie Marriott's parents, Bob and Melissa, do not feel the sentence is sufficient. They hope her case can serve as a warning to others, especially women. They created a memorial bench in her hometown since her body was never recovered. Hello friends. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Carrie Leah Farver. Carrie Leah Farver was born on November 30th, 1974, in Macedonia, Nebraska, USA. As a single mother, she raised her son, Max Maxwell, after experiencing failed relationships in the past. Raising Max was challenging for Carrie. Despite her immense love for her child, she struggled with depression, which led to a period where she spent a month in bed. During this time, her mother, Nancy Rainey, took care of Max. Carrie's difficult relationship with Max's father and unstable living conditions contributed to her mental health issues. At the age of 20, Carrie's struggles led to a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. This condition causes extreme mood swings, ranging from euphoria, increased productivity, and excessive friendliness to depression, bitterness, and feelings of powerlessness. Although bipolar disorder significantly complicates daily life, Carrie's doctor found an effective treatment for her in the early 2000s. With this treatment, Carrie was able to manage her condition and live a relatively normal life. Whether Carrie wanted to settle her personal life is an open question. On one hand, what woman doesn't dream of a suitable partner? On the other hand, why commit to someone who might bring worries and misfortunes? Carrie was raised in a loving family and had an active lifestyle. She played sports and aspired to become a doctor. However, her dreams were cut short during her first medical practice when she fainted at the sight of blood. Deciding not to risk her health or her patients, she pursued a career in programming instead. In the fall of 2012, Carrie received a job offer in Omaha with good prospects and decided to take it. However, her son Max was in middle school and preferred to stay in his familiar surroundings, so he remained with his grandmother in Macedonia. According to Amy, a friend of Carrie's father, Carrie had a radiant smile that drew attention whenever she entered a room. It was likely this quality that caught Dave Kropa's eye when they met at an auto repair shop in November 2012. As Carrie showed him something inside her car, a Ford Explorer, Dave felt an instant attraction. Their first date arrived soon after, but their time together was interrupted by numerous calls and messages from a woman named Liz, who eventually stopped by Dave's apartment to collect something she had left there earlier. Dave told Carrie about his past relationship with Liz, whom he met on a dating site 6 months prior. They had been together for a while, but he ended things because she was extremely clingy. Carrie was understanding and wasn't fazed by Liz's presence in Dave's apartment, recognizing that everyone has past relationships that can resurface. 2 weeks after moving in, Carrie started dating Dave. They had discussed their expectations beforehand and agreed to a brief, casual affair. Liz, whose full name is Shaunana Elizabeth Gollier, was the first person Dave met online in 2012. Dave and Liz had children around the same age. However, Dave felt Liz wasn't a suitable long-term partner due to her limited education and lack of shared interests. Their relationship focused more on physical intimacy than meaningful conversations. Over time, Liz grew increasingly interested in what Dave was doing when she wasn't around, particularly in regards to who he was seeing. However, Dave consistently reminded her that they were in an open relationship, implying that she shouldn't be concerned about his interactions with others. He also reassured her that she had the freedom to date other men if she chose to do so. Despite Dave's openness, Liz couldn't shake off her feelings of dissatisfaction and jealousy, particularly towards Dave's children and their mother, Amy. She struggled to understand the close bond that persisted between Dave and Amy even after their breakup. As a result, Liz's behavior became increasingly possessive, prompting Dave to create distance between them. It was during this period of separation that Carrie entered Dave's life. Carrie was not only beautiful but also stylish, intelligent, and a great conversationalist. Dave found himself lost in conversation with her for hours, feeling an undeniable connection as they shared common interests and perspectives. Liz noticed that Dave was becoming increasingly distant, so she tried to rekindle their connection by sending messages, emails, and making phone calls. However, he had no intention of stopping his interactions with Carrie or anyone else for her sake. Meanwhile, Carrie and Dave were spending more nights together, which was convenient for Carrie's work schedule and enjoyable for Dave. Carrie seemed to be taking things lightly, focusing on having fun and not looking for anything serious. In December 2015, Liz was shot and non-fatally wounded, leading her to suspect who might be responsible and realize she needed to take action. 2 years prior, on November 13, 2012, Carrie had kissed Dave goodbye before he left for work, expecting to see him later. However, that would be the last time they saw each other. At 9:45 a.m. that morning, Dave received a surprising text message from Carrie stating she wanted to move in with him permanently. Dave found this message disconcerting as they had previously discussed and agreed not to rush into a relationship, being happy with their current situation. Dave replied that he wasn't ready for such a change, but Carrie's response was unpleasant and filled with profanity. He was shocked to discover that all of Carrie's belongings were gone from the apartment. This led him to believe she had left him for good. That same day, Carrie also removed him as a friend on Facebook, which seemed like the end of the matter. However, Dave started getting multiple rude texts and emails from Carrie daily, containing curses and threats to ruin his life. Carrie sent a large number of these messages, all of which were aggressive. Uncharacteristically, she also stopped showing up for work, despite being known for her punctuality. Strange messages weren't only sent to Dave but also to her mother and 15-year-old son, Max. She claimed to have found a job in Kansas and planned to take Max with her, but wanted to be alone for the time being due to worries over her failed romance. In May 2013, Carrie posted on Facebook that she'd left of her own free will and was tired of criticism. She wasn't missing her old life but wasn't ready to return home. Carrie asserted her independence as a grown woman, stating that she had the right to leave home if she chose to. She apologized for hurting everyone by leaving abruptly. However, as time passed, Carrie failed to reappear. Her mother became increasingly concerned when Carrie missed important family events, including her own birthday, Max's birthday, and other celebrations. The final indication that something was seriously wrong was when Carrie missed her father's funeral. Liz began receiving messages from Carrie, which were insulting, humiliating, and even threatening. Carrie warned Liz to stay away from Dave. Confused by Carrie's behavior, Liz reached out to Dave, who revealed he was facing a similar situation. Carrie was sending him messages and emails, accusing him of wrongdoing, calling him a liar, and vowing revenge for the pain he allegedly caused her. The messages were sometimes ominous, with Carrie claiming to know what Dave was doing at the moment. The shared experience brought Dave and Liz closer together, but also made Dave feel guiltier about the trouble he had caused. The messages from Carrie grew more menacing and were filled with grammatical errors and illogical content. This was unusual, as Carrie's mother claimed that her daughter had always been a calm person who wrote coherent and well-structured letters and documents. Carrie was known to be meticulous about spelling and writing style. It's possible that she had experienced even more severe mental health issues. Her actions seemed to be driven solely by her uncontrolled mental state. A key indicator of dissociative identity disorder, also known as split personality, is the presence of separate, simultaneous self-consciousness in each ego, each with its own distinct memories, thoughts, behaviors, and inclinations towards specific actions. This might explain Carrie's unusual behavior and altered writing style. Everything suggested she was unstable, which is why the police didn't initially consider her missing, instead focusing on stopping the pursuit of Liz and Dave. They tried to track Carrie's cell phone, but it was unsuccessful due to blocked signals. Meanwhile, Liz and Dave continued to receive hundreds of texts and emails, sometimes simultaneously receiving nasty messages when they were together. Dave and Liz continued dating, but he felt uneasy around her as she became increasingly demanding. Despite claiming to be fine with their no-commitment relationship, Liz's behavior suggested otherwise. Every time Dave tried to end things with Liz, Carrie would start texting him, bonding with him over their shared victimization. This common ground drew Dave and Carrie closer together, causing them to reunite repeatedly. In January 2013, a missing car was surprisingly found in Dave's front yard. However, the fingerprints on the steering wheel didn't match Carrie's, and the car showed no suspicious signs. The police eventually returned the car to Carrie's parents. Carrie continued to message Liz and Dave, escalating her behavior by sending pictures of their children and threatening to harm them unless Dave left Liz alone. As time passed, Carrie's stalking persisted, and Liz's jealousy grew, frustrating Dave. He became exhausted with the events unfolding in his life and eventually found the strength to end his relationship with Liz. This decision came shortly after a tragic incident in August 2013, when Liz reported a fire at her home that resulted in the death of all her pets, including a snake, a cat, and 2 dogs. Liz suspected Carrie was responsible, citing repeated threats made via texts and emails. The incident marked a significant turning point in the case of missing person Carrie Farver, leading to Carrie's placement on a federal wanted list. Tens of thousands of messages were meticulously analyzed. Law enforcement seized cell phones from Dave and Liz, as they believed Dave was also in danger. Someone had vandalized the auto repair shop where he worked and thrown a brick through his window. It appeared that Carrie's anger was directed at anyone in Dave's life. Consequently, Amy Flora, Fave's ex-wife, began receiving threatening messages from Carrie. As Dave spent time with his children, he also saw Amy regularly. The police were perplexed as to why Carrie, who had dated Dave for less than 2 weeks, was now stalking Dave and his ex-wife. The investigators decided to focus on Dave Coupa, as Carrie's disappearance raised many questions that needed to be answered. It was a mystery that didn't add up. Carrie Farver's family was also tirelessly searching for her, exploring every possible lead to find her. Their efforts finally paid off in the spring of 2015, when detectives Ryan Avis and Jim Doty took on the case. Unfortunately, they found no evidence that Carrie was still alive. One of the detectives shared their thoughts with ABC News. It's unusual for adults to suddenly leave without using any money. No one saw or heard from her, which doesn't make sense. She had a good income and a nice home. I've come to believe that I have no proof she's alive. With the help of a digital forensics expert, the detectives analyzed data from Kropa and Gore's phones from 2013. Kawa discovered that Carrie had sent over 50,000 texts and 15,000 emails to Dave in just 3 years. Whoever was impersonating Carrie became increasingly sophisticated, trying to hide their IP address and true identity. Somebody with expertise in computer programs seemed to be behind the strange occurrences. In December 2015, Liz Gard contacted the police again, this time reporting that she had been shot in the leg on her own doorstep. She claimed her attacker was Amy Flora, not Carrie. Coincidentally, Dave was missing a gun that Amy may have had access to. This new development raised suspicions that Amy might be involved in Carrie's disappearance. The investigation uncovered a lead that suggested Amy's motive. She may have been seeking revenge against women connected to Dave Krupp. Amy's relationship with Dave had been complicated, and the presence of other women in his life might have prevented them from reuniting. The police promptly questioned Amy, but surprisingly, she had a solid alibi. Multiple witnesses confirmed that she was not at Liz's house when the shooting occurred, so no arrest was made. The investigation became increasingly puzzling. New details emerged from the analysis of Liz's cell phone data. Investigators found fake email addresses using variations of Farver's name and an app used to schedule messages. This discovery shed light on how Liz and Dave received simultaneous messages from Carrie. The investigation led to suspicion of Liz Gollier, which intensified when her fingerprint matched those on Carrie's car steering wheel. It was now clear who the culprit was, and the priority was to prevent further harm. To catch Liz off guard, detectives devised a plan to create a fake narrative, pretending to still consider Amy the prime suspect, aiming to prevent Liz from escaping or destroying evidence. Liz fell for the trap. She was thrilled at the opportunity to eliminate another rival who was threatening her relationship with Dave. Soon after, Liz Gollier gave the police an email supposedly written by Amy. The email included a confession to kidnapping Carrie, along with specific details about the crime. According to the confession, Carrie had been stabbed in the stomach or chest area before her body was disposed of. The email also revealed information about Carrie's car and home that had not been publicly disclosed. According to an investigative spokeswoman, Liz provided detectives with information that only someone intimately involved in the crime could have known. In doing so, she inadvertently implicated herself in Carrie Farver's murder. The letter made it clear that the crime occurred in a car, prompting authorities to re-examine the victim's vehicle. Upon removing the seat covers and fabric, specialists discovered a blood stain belonging to Carrie Farver. Liz managed to send messages posing as Carrie without arousing suspicion, but it's unclear how. Reports suggest that Liz Gollier led a double life, dating both Dave and a man named Garrett. Notably, Garrett's IP address was linked to messages sent under Carrie's name. When questioned, Garrett revealed that he had been in a long-term relationship with Liz. Out of kindness, Garrett invited Liz to move in with him and his children after a fire. However, their relationship became complicated and deteriorated significantly once they started living together. Garrett would often take care of Liz's children while she isolated herself in her room or left the house. Garrett was shocked by what the police told him. It was discovered that Liz spent 40 to 50 hours a week pretending to be a missing woman. Although her room was messy, no significant evidence was found. However, investigators did discover several cell phones and electronic devices in the last place she stayed. In late December 2016, Shaunana Liz was charged with first-degree murder. The county prosecutor commented on the complexity of the investigation, stating that most murders are dark, but this crime was particularly bizarre. It would take some convincing to make someone believe it actually happened. Liz's actions, including letting her dog die in a fire she set herself and shooting herself in the thigh, were attempts to deflect suspicion from herself. Liz's attorney, James Martin Davis, believed the case against her was weak since it was largely based on circumstantial evidence. Key pieces of evidence were missing, including Carrie's body and the crime weapon, and Liz had not confessed to the crime. In fact, there was no conclusive proof that Carrie was even dead. The defense team requested a mistrial, which would allow a judge to determine the extent of Shaunana's guilt. The prosecution presented a substantial amount of complex electronic evidence, as well as physical evidence. They argued that the amount of blood found on the passenger seat of Carrie's car supported the theory that she had been stabbed. Investigators also found a direct link between Shaunana and Carrie's murder by analyzing a memory card that Shaunana had used around the time Carrie went missing. The memory card, which was found in a tablet stored at Dave's residence, contained deleted images. It was clear that the foot belonged to a people who had been deceased for several years. Notably, Carrie had a similar tattoo among her distinguishing features. Her mother later confirmed that the tattoo indeed belonged to Carrie. The photo solidified the conviction of Shaunana Liz was predator. The judge ruled her guilty of first-degree murder and handed down a life sentence without parole, stating that Carrie Farver did not disappear by choice but was tragically murdered. Authorities suspect that Shaunana murdered Carrie, allowed her body to decompose, and then burned the remains to eliminate all evidence. Motivated by jealousy, she decided to eliminate her rival. After disposing of Carrie, Shaunana took her cell phone and used it to send messages that would make Farver appear unstable and win back Dave's favor. When this plan succeeded, Shaunana wanted to eliminate Amy as well, but she became too entangled in her own scheme and ultimately fell into her own trap. Shaunana, also known as Liz, was also found guilty of arson for setting fire to her own home in August 2013 and attempting to blame it on Carrie. The fire destroyed the house and killed pets, resulting in an additional 20-year prison sentence. She is currently serving her sentence at the Nebraska Correctional Center for Women, despite maintaining her innocence. Dave revealed that he received thousands of emails and text messages signed by Carrie over the years. However, he claimed that he never noticed Carrie stalking him during their relationship, which contrasts with his experience with Shawnana. So, what happened to Carrie's son, Maxwell Farver? According to his LinkedIn profile, he followed in his mother's footsteps and became a computer programmer. He graduated from the University of Iowa with a degree in software engineering and data science, and is now married. Although it's unlikely he's forgotten the past, he may have found some peace with his new family. As for Dave Kropa, he now lives a private life, away from the public eye. He doesn't have a public account on any social media platform. This disturbing crime story is a harsh reminder of the complexities and manipulation that can occur in human relationships. It highlights how vulnerable we can be in our own surroundings, unaware of the true nature of those around us. Hello friends. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Roxana Valdez. Roxana Valdez was born in 1957 in a small village in the province of Punta Arenas, Chile. Roxana married a man whose name is not publicly known, and they had a son together. However, the marriage was not successful, and they separated in 2011. As a single mother, Roxana faced significant challenges in her small village, where job opportunities were limited. The community's main occupation was farming and selling produce, and the local schools focused on teaching agricultural skills. Roxana worked at the Don Gregorio boarding school, which trained students to become agricultural technicians. Her role was a night supervisor, responsible for ensuring the students' behavior and slept at night. She did not have a direct role in raising the children. Roxana's son attended the same boarding school, as she was unable to care for him during the day due to her work in the fields. At the boarding school where Roxana worked, Claudio Muñoz Ramirez was the head of grounds maintenance. His nighttime work schedule led to him meeting Roxana. Despite their 14-year age difference, they discovered they had a lot to talk about. Roxana would often spend entire nights discussing school issues and her failed marriage with Claudio. They also shared commonalities in their personal lives. Claudio had 2 daughters he loved, but he felt disconnected from their mother and had considered divorce multiple times. However, he stayed in the marriage because of a promise he made to her late father. Over time, Claudio seemed to forget his promise and began spending more time with Roxana, away from his family. Eventually, he made a decisive move without explaining himself to his wife. He packed his belongings and left their home to be with Roxana, who happily welcomed him into her life. Their relationship moved forward quickly, but Roxana overlooked some important red flags. She welcomed a man she barely knew into her home, despite having children who needed her attention. As they had enjoyable conversations, Roxana failed to notice that Claudio had a temper and could be cruel. The first major incident occurred at the boarding school, where Claudio was in charge of cleanliness. During a scheduled cleanup day, some students refused to participate, which infuriated Claudio. He threatened to beat anyone who didn't help, despite having no teaching experience. Although it's unclear if he would have followed through on this threat, the students eventually started cleaning. Later, they collectively complained to the principal about Claudio's threats of physical violence. The principal, unhappy with Claudio, asked him to resign voluntarily. This was a significant setback, as the Don Gregorio boarding school was one of the few places in the area that offered stable and decent-paying jobs. After searching for work in fields and at fruit bases, Claudio realized it was a futile effort. He and Roxana decided to look for a better life elsewhere, but they left their son at the boarding school so he could continue his education. They didn't want to take any risks by bringing him along. To avoid relying on employers, who had already let them down, Claudio and Roxana decided to start their own small business, a fruit kiosk. They moved to Molina, a commune a couple of hours from the Chilean capital, known for its vineyards and wine exports. Roxana and Claudio bought a kiosk near their new home, found suppliers for vegetables and fruits, and started their small family business. Claudio took care of purchasing and transporting products, while Roxana handled sales throughout the day. They couldn't afford to hire an employee, as it would add to their expenses, and they worried that someone else might not take care of the perishable goods properly. Claudio became visibly upset and angry when he discovered Roxana was pregnant with their first child. This was a moment that required serious thought, but Roxana, caught up in their new relationship and thriving business, agreed with Claudio's suggestion to give the baby to her relatives to raise after birth. However, Roxana suffered a miscarriage afterwards. Following this, Claudio's behavior changed significantly. He frequently yelled at Roxana and occasionally turned violent. Neighbors, tired of the constant noise, often called the Chilean police, the Carabineros, to intervene in their domestic disputes. One time, when the Carabineros responded to a call, they found Roxana in tears and partially undressed, fleeing the house with Claudio chasing after her. Roxana revealed to the officers that she was suffering from ongoing domestic abuse, which had caused her miscarriage. The incident left her needing psychological support. However, as time went by, they seemed to put their issues behind them and continued living together as if nothing had happened. After the incident, Claudio should have faced charges, but Roxana chose to forgive him and give him another chance. She made him promise that it wouldn't happen again. Although Claudio promised to change, his past behavior with his ex-wife suggested that his words might not be reliable. Sadly, the past repeated itself. Claudio stopped physically abusing Roxana, but he started going out to local bars at night, drinking heavily and spending a lot of their family's money on alcohol and encounters with women. Roxana put up with her husband's behavior, hoping that he would settle down once they had a child. In a way, she was correct. After Roxana gave birth to a healthy child in 2013, Claudio changed his ways. He stopped going out and focused on their business, which was growing and needed more attention. They expanded their business by buying another kiosk and vehicle for transporting products. Roxana also invested in firearms for protection, as they lived and worked in areas that weren't very safe. The family's assets appeared to increase substantially, but this growth was only theoretical. In reality, Claudio resumed his previous habits, wasting money on alcohol and reverting to violent behavior towards Roxana. Roxana's account detailed how the abuse in their relationship escalated. At first, Claudio drank sporadically, but the frequency soon increased. When inebriated, he would return home, accuse Roxana of fictional affairs, and subject her to physical and sexual abuse. His actions seemed intentionally hurtful, even when Roxana was pregnant. This culminated in a miscarriage in August 2012, sending Roxana into a prolonged depression. On one occasion, following his typical routine, Claudio went to a local bar and didn't come back until the next morning. Roxana, accustomed to his behavior, still felt anxious about him. It was later discovered that Claudio had taken 5 million Chilean pesos, equivalent to around $6,000, which Roxana had obtained from selling her mother's house. He spent this money on alcohol and visits to brothels. Roxana was shocked and felt betrayed when she discovered that Claudio had taken the money meant for their shared business, which was hidden in their daughter's room. When Claudio came home late that evening, Roxana confronted him about the missing money. However, Claudio was uninterested in discussing the issue and instead hit Roxana, admitting that he had squandered all the money. This incident was the final straw for Roxana. Without saying a word, she went to their bedroom, retrieved a revolver that was meant for protection against local criminals, and shot Claudio in the chest. Claudio died instantly. Roxana was surprised by her own drastic action and attempted to stop the bleeding from the gunshot wound, but it was too late. The close-range shot from the .38 caliber revolver was fatal. In her testimony, Roxana expressed deep remorse and acknowledged the immorality of her actions. She confessed that when she retrieved the revolver, her intention was not to intimidate Claudio but to kill him. Roxana remembered the numerous times Claudio abused and assaulted her, and how she failed to report him to the authorities due to fear. She was afraid of being alone, especially after they had a child together. After shooting Claudio, Roxana's main concern was how it would affect their daughter if she were imprisoned and the child was sent to an institution. That night, Roxana decided to get rid of the body and report Claudio missing. She knew the police were aware of his frequent disappearances during drinking binges. As a delicate woman, disposing of the body was a daunting task. She decided to remove it piece by piece, using kitchen knives to cut the limbs and head. The process required 5 knives, as they kept becoming dull. Roxana then boiled the dismembered parts in large pots, all while playing with her young daughter, who was unaware of what her mother was doing and what had happened to her father. Roxana's calculated approach to disposing of the body, while trying to maintain a sense of normalcy for her daughter, shows the complexity and desperation of her situation. The day after cooking and cooling the body parts, Roxana packed them into separate plastic containers labeled by body part, hands, legs, head, and torso, and then placed each container into a garbage bag. She loaded the bags into her car and drove to St. Lucia to scatter them on a vacant lot. Before leaving, she cleaned her house thoroughly with bleach. However, upon arriving in St. Lucia, Roxana couldn't bring herself to dispose of the bags, despite finding a suitable location. Roxana was nervous during the drive, constantly feeling like she was being watched and fearing that the police would stop and search her car. This fear escalated into panic, prompting her to devise a backup plan involving her daughter, where she would pretend to rush her to the hospital if stopped by police. She even considered pinching her daughter to make her cry louder and make the situation more believable. Since Roxana couldn't discard the remains, she returned home and hid the bags in the garage. She then cleaned the interior of her car with bleach again and visited Claudio's relatives. She told the police that Claudio had stolen a large sum of money and hadn't been home for days, but they simply shrugged off her claims. Roxana visited her mother and brother, who were alarmed by her condition. She wasn't eating, had a glazed expression, and kept asking the same questions. The only question she answered clearly was about Claudio's absence, claiming he was delayed due to a flat tire while buying goods for their store. Overwhelmed by her thoughts and the hidden evidence, Roxana broke down and asked her brother for help. When he arrived, she revealed everything and showed him the containers. Her brother was shocked. Roxana wanted to unburden herself and share the traumatic experiences she had with Claudio, but she primarily needed her brother's help to dispose of the containers holding the body. However, her brother refused, fearing he would be implicated as an accomplice and face police involvement. He urged Roxana to confess to the Chilean police, the Carabineros, and threatened to do it himself if she didn't. Disappointed but with no alternative, Roxana decided to cooperate. That night, she went to the 4th police station to make a significant statement. The officers, who knew her, initially assumed she was there to report her problematic husband. However, they were stunned by what she revealed. Roxana was arrested on the spot. News of her arrest spread quickly, drawing numerous journalists to the station. As the journalists waited, Roxana was eventually brought out, visibly distressed and in handcuffs. Before being escorted into a police car, she exclaimed, "I was afraid he would kill me one day." At first glance, the case seemed straightforward. Roxana had confessed, provided evidence, and surrendered voluntarily. Nevertheless, prosecutor Monica Bisos was skeptical of Roxana's easy confession and wanted a more thorough investigation. Prosecutor Bisos asked to extend Roxana's arrest to allow for further forensic examination. The goal was to determine if Claudio was still alive when his body was dismembered, which would have led to a longer sentence for Roxana. The judge agreed to a 60-day detention to continue the investigation. At the same time, Roxana's lawyer, Carolina Gutierrez, argued that Roxana committed the crime under extreme emotional distress. This could have been made worse by postpartum depression and the domestic abuse she suffered. Gutierrez highlighted Roxana's cooperation with the authorities and her voluntary confession as reasons for a more lenient sentence. However, forensic results later showed that Claudio died from a gunshot wound to the chest, disproving the prosecution's theory that he was alive during dismemberment. As a result, the factors that would have increased Roxana's sentence were dismissed. Another lawyer, Juan Pablo Cardenas, pointed out that the gun used in the murder was registered. He also noted that Roxana first reported domestic violence to the police just 20 days after they moved in together. Psychologist Rodrigo Valenzuela conducted a medical examination and presented documents to the court showing that Roxana was severely mentally unstable when the crime occurred. This instability, linked to the loss of 2 children, meant she wasn't fully aware of her actions. Additionally, forensic results revealed that Claudio had a high blood alcohol level at the time of his death on April 17, 2015. Roxana's trial began after a year of investigations and evidence gathering. During the trial, Roxana refused to make statements due to her distress over the media portrayal. Prosecutors emphasized the severity of the crime, but couldn't prove premeditation. The defense argued that Roxana acted in self-defense against a man who had brutally mistreated her for years. The court hearing in Chile lasted several weeks, captivating the entire nation. Prosecutor Monica sought a 15-year prison term for Roxana, the accused. After considering the defense and the jury's input, the judges sentenced Roxana to 6 years in a correctional facility with a relatively lenient regime. Claudio's family, who had hoped for a life sentence or even the death penalty for Roxana, were outraged by the court's decision. They had already been upset when the prosecutor requested a 15-year sentence, which they felt was too lenient. The family attempted to downplay any history of domestic violence and claimed that Claudio, a financially independent businessman, would not have stolen $6,000 from Roxana. Additionally, they alleged that Claudio had confided in them about Roxana's threatening behavior, stating that she would often retrieve a revolver from the closet and threaten to kill him. In a press interview, Claudio's sister shifted the blame to the Chilean state, arguing that the country's judicial system is corrupt and fails to deliver justice, as evidenced by the relatively short sentence given to Roxana, which she compared to punishments for minor thefts. Giselle, Claudio's first wife, spoke out in his defense. She stated that Claudio was never violent during their many years together. In contrast, Roxana frequently started arguments due to her jealousy and possessiveness. Roxana was initially imprisoned, but after serving 2/3 of her sentence, she was transferred to a semi-open education center in Tala for good behavior. She was allowed to stay in contact with her daughter and was eventually released early. The media reignited public interest in the case, and many people were outraged by her early release. However, some individuals, despite viewing Roxana as a murderer, believed her actions were justified because they saw her as a victim. The debate surrounding this case continues to this day. This story emphasizes the severe consequences that can occur when domestic violence is not addressed promptly. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Jennifer Brown. Jennifer Brown was born in 1979, radiated positivity and warmth, impacting those around her. Her numerous pursuits often left friends and family wondering how she managed it all, but her true passion was being a mother. Despite having to care for Noah, her son, this has not negatively affected her life. Instead, make Jennifer stronger, especially after Noah was diagnosed with autism as a child. As she cared for Noah, Jennifer became his rock and closest friend. They spent countless hours together, sharing joyful moments and supporting each other through life's challenges. Their heartwarming bond evoked feelings of tenderness and admiration from those who knew them. The small town adored this family for their genuine kindness and cheerful nature. Tragedy struck unexpectedly on January 3, 2023, when Jennifer vanished without leaving behind any clues. On January 4, 2023, Antonio Blair Watts Richardson contacted the Limerick Township Police Department, deeply concerned about his close friend Jennifer's disappearance. Although it had been less than 24 hours since he last saw or heard from her, Antonio's anxiety was growing by the minute. Despite numerous attempts, he couldn't reach Jennifer, which was unusual since she was always responsive, especially when it came to her son Noah. Jennifer's family and friends knew her as a devoted mother and caring person, making her sudden disappearance alarming. Antonio's call to the police initiated a lengthy and mysterious investigation. A massive search effort began, involving police officers, family, and friends, all hoping to find clues about Jennifer's disappearance. The main question on everyone's mind was what could have caused Jennifer to leave her son without explanation. At 4 p.m., Officer Stephen Crawford from the Limerick Township Police Department visited the Brown family home to check on the situation. He observed Jennifer's vehicle parked near the porch. Upon entering the house, he found her keys, purse, tablet, and work cell phone still inside. However, Jennifer's personal cell phone was nowhere to be found. When police attempted to track the phone, they discovered it had been turned off at 7 a.m. on January 4th and the signal couldn't be traced after that. The last known location of the phone was near the intersection of Lewis Road and Ridge Pike in Limerick. This discovery marked the first significant lead in the investigation and indicated that something ominous had occurred. As a result, Jennifer was officially reported missing, and the police launched an investigation. Investigators questioned Jennifer's family, friends, and neighbors, but none of them had any information about her disappearance. Her loved ones, including her Aunt Diane Brem and Jennifer's friends Tiffany Barron and Antonio, were adamant that Jennifer would never leave her son behind. As a devoted mother, she would never abandon her child. Despite efforts, no leads were found in Jennifer's disappearance. Her family appealed to the public and a reward was offered for information, but yielded nothing, leaving unanswered questions and growing anxiety. The police investigation started by examining the events of that day, focusing on Jennifer's close friend Antonio, who was the last person to see her alive. On what seemed like an ordinary January day, Jennifer and Antonio spent time in the living room discussing life, future plans, and their children. As their kids often played together, Jennifer asked Antonio to pick up her son Noah from school. Antonio agreed and headed to the school to get Noah. The next day, however, Noah's behavior at school raised concerns among his teachers. They noticed that he had missed 2 doses of his medication, which was unusual given Jennifer's diligent care for her son's condition. She always kept his teachers informed about his health and any issues that arose at school. The school staff became concerned when they couldn't reach Jennifer. Noah told them Jennifer had gone to the grocery store but hadn't returned. She would never leave her son alone at this time. Antonio also tried to contact her but was unsuccessful. Antonio reported her missing to the police. As the investigation continued, no new information about Jennifer's whereabouts emerged. Hope for her return began to fade with each passing day. It seemed she had vanished without a trace and might never be found. However, on January 18th, 2 weeks after her disappearance was reported, 2 warehouse employees in nearby Limerick Township stumbled upon something unusual. They exited the building to grab coffee and stumbled upon what seemed to be a freshly dug hole. Upon closer inspection, they were shocked to find a woman's body buried in a shallow grave. The workers immediately notified the police, who promptly arrived at the scene. The body was identified as Jennifer Brown, who had been missing for 2 weeks. The sheriff informed Jennifer's family that her body had been found partially buried near a warehouse in Rochefort. An autopsy revealed that Jennifer's death was caused by asphyxiation, with 3 broken ribs indicating a violent struggle with her killer. The investigation shifted from a missing person case to a murder case. Police re-interviewed Jennifer's family and friends, but these conversations yielded no new leads. The investigation seemed to be reaching a dead end, with no suspects in sight. However, just when detectives thought they had hit a roadblock, an unexpected lead emerged from an unforeseen source. After Jennifer's disappearance and murder were made public, the police asked anyone with relevant information to come forward. Noah's teacher responded to this request. She remembered an incident that initially seemed insignificant but raised serious concerns after Jennifer's death. The teacher reported that Noah shared an important detail about the day Jennifer disappeared. Noah told his teacher that when Antonio picked him up from the bus stop on January 3rd, he saw his mom's personal cell phone among Antonio's belongings. Noah recognized the phone because the lock screen showed his own childhood photo. This information proved crucial in the investigation into Jennifer's murder. Previously, investigators suspected that Jennifer's killer had taken her phone. Now, Antonio became the main suspect. The police started investigating the relationship between Jennifer and Antonio, uncovering surprising details. Initially, Jennifer and Antonio's friendship appeared strong and enduring. They spent a significant amount of time together, were well acquainted, and their families socialized with one another. However, once the financial dealings between them became known, one that had been concealed behind their seemingly friendly relationship. Antonio owned a restaurant called Bird's Kitchen, which had declined and closed in early 2022. Following this, Antonio sought help from Jennifer in August 2022. To support her friend, Jennifer decided to invest in Antonio's business, helping him reopen Bird's Kitchen in a new location. They signed a contract that required Jennifer to provide regular financial support to sustain the restaurant, making payments approximately every 6 weeks. To rebuild Bird's Kitchen, Jennifer gave Antonio approximately $36,000 from August to January. They agreed she would give him another $99,000. Antonio was supposed to find a new location, pay rent, sign a contract, and reopen the restaurant in January 2023. However, Antonio spent the money on personal needs instead of the business. As a result, the property owners canceled their agreement with him on December 26, 2022, because he failed to meet his financial obligations. This left Antonio in a difficult situation, losing both money and the opportunity to open the restaurant. The police suspected Antonio of committing a crime to save his business due to his desperate situation. Upon investigating Jennifer's iPad, they found 2 unauthorized transfers of $177,000 to Bird's Kitchen on January 3rd. These transfers were not part of the agreement between Jennifer and Antonio, and they initially failed due to 2-factor authentication, which was later disabled. This evidence increasingly implicated Antonio in her murder. Police interviewed the owners of the property where Antonio lived, who had recently terminated his lease. Surprisingly, on January 4th, the same day Antonio reported Jennifer missing, he had met with them, claiming he had the money to sign a new lease. This led investigators to believe that Antonio was likely the killer, but they knew he would not confess easily. They needed concrete evidence to prove his guilt. To gather more information, investigators spoke with Antonio's wife, Tiara Taylor. They asked her about Antonio's whereabouts on the day Jennifer went missing. Tiara told them that Antonio had visited the Brown family at around 1 p.m. on January 3rd and didn't return home until 4:30 a.m. the next morning, when he picked up Noah from the bus stop. She also mentioned that Antonio came home briefly, then left again around 5 p.m. and didn't return until late that night. This timeline became a crucial focus point for further investigation. Further investigation found that Antonio spent the night with his mistress, Tatiana Garrett, and didn't meet her until 8 p.m. This left a 3-hour gap with no alibi. Based on evidence, detectives created a timeline of the murder. According to them, Antonio went to Jennifer's house on January 3 around 1 p.m. and allegedly killed her while Noah was at school. Antonio then transferred funds from Jennifer's iPad to his account and left to pick up Noah from the bus stop around 4 p.m. Later, he returned to Jennifer's house, dropped off Noah, and went back to dispose of the body. He buried it in a shallow grave in a field near Roseford. Afterwards, he went to Tatiana's house and spent the night. Everything seemed carefully planned, but one mistake led the police to Antonio. The mistake was letting Noah see his mother's cell phone. The police had enough evidence to convict him but investigated further to confirm his guilt. This involved film experts and a trained dog that could detect cadaveric odors indoors. First, the dog was taken to Jennifer's home to familiarize itself with her scent. This was the same location where the crime had occurred, in her kitchen. The police then led the dog to Antonio's car, where it immediately picked up the same scent. This final piece of evidence solidified the detective's suspicions of Antonio's involvement in the murder. After months of investigation, Antonio was arrested on February 8 and charged with first-degree murder, third-degree murder, and theft. He is currently being held at the Montgomery County Correctional Facility without bail, awaiting a preliminary hearing where he will face the law for his alleged crimes. Jennifer's loved ones were devastated by her death, especially since the killer was someone they trusted. Now that the killer has been brought to justice, the case was finally closed. The boy's observation of the killer's mistake played a crucial role in uncovering the truth and bringing the perpetrator to justice. The tragic events in Limer Township serve as a reminder that even the most meticulously planned crimes will ultimately be solved. Cruel and inhumane acts will not go unpunished, and those responsible will face the law.